get on the elevator.
Yeah.
And we had at least 6 to 10 people riding down on the elevator. They met us downstairs. No, you're not supposed to get on the elevator.
I've had a fire drill since high school, probably.
And then they cleared it.
My mom literally show you what push around the fire thing to see if you could turn it off. And I'm like, Mom, no. Fire department has to go.
Oh, and I mean, I'm over. I thought for some reason I kept punching the buttons on the thermostat. And I'm just up there going, why won't it shut off? So then I thought, well, let me stick my head out the front at the door to see if it's going off everywhere. And the entire floor is lit up, and there is nobody.
People just sleep through it.
So we went down. It didn't take them long to clear it. The fire trucks were already there by the time we figured out what the hell was going on. I was like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And, so we get downstairs, and the parking lot's full of people. They clear it pretty quickly. We all kind of wander back in to get back on the elevators, go up top, and we hit the elevator, and the doors open, and this couple just walks off, and I'm like, it's cleared. Oh, it's like.
There was one hotel I was at the con where somebody did exactly what you're not supposed to do, hung their costume from the fire sprinkler.
Oh,
my God.
It flooded
not to do that.
Yep, it flooded the entire floor.
Oh,
Were you at the Raven Con where there was like the tornado going on and the fire alarm? But we were on the 8th floor, yo.
Yes.
So we're like looking like, do we go down? What do we do? So we just went to the lobby, down 8 flights of stairs. I'm like, I'm not staying up here if there's a fire, but I'm not going outside in the pouring rain for a tornado.
I was at the dentist for a tornado alarm.
I had one fire alarm in college when I was in the shower. That was fun. And then one woke us up at like 6 a.m. one day.
Charlie, will you flip around and close that door, please?
sure.
Thank God I still have my clothes with me because the shower had like a little dressing area. So I put my clothes on it, run out in a towel. That was terrible.
We ready to get? Are we missing somebody?
I thought Tally was in this bathroom.
Yeah,
I
he's
went
supposed-
over.
Supposed to be, but I doubt he's going to be here.
I saw Tyler last night. He may not be here.
Yeah, I suspect that will be the case.
That would not surprise me at all. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. If he wanders in, he wanders in.
We'll
Are
find
the
him.
microphones even working? Oh. That's the reason they weren't using them last night.
I thought they kind of were yesterday.
Anyway, I don't particularly need one anyway. Good morning, everyone. That was way too enthusiastic.
Cryptids.
Yay, Sunday morning. Yay.
Thank you for showing up on a Sunday morning to
Thank
our panel.
you.
Yeah.
Makes me
Yes,
very
give
happy.
yourself a round of applause. You may not give us one by the end of it. My name is Sammy Castle. I have a book, even though I'm not a writer. I don't have any with me that I've sent somebody to go get them because this is the one panel I need them at. But my production partners do a podcast called Carolina Hates. And we have a book, and the book is basically the legends that we visited. But then it is backed up with, we actually took a road trip and visited all the sites. So that tells the story, the continuing story of our experiences while we were there. So I've been a lifelong fan of the paranormal and cryptids and all that kind of stuff. So even though my stuff says filmmaker, actor, all that weird, funny stuff, comedian, we're trying to be. I'm also fairly adept at this, maybe not as much as my panelists, but how about everybody introduce themselves?
I get to do this.
Yes.
I'm Karen Carruthers. I am not from around these parts. I'm a Marylander, born and raised. And I'm not entirely sure how I ended up on this panel, but I do kind of like cryptids. I know a little bit about the ones I've admired. I got a little crash course in Carolina cryptids from Share last night. Lifelong paranormal enthusiast. I've been a paranormal investigator for a little over 20 years. By day, I'm a mild-mannered rocket scientist of my way.
Why, yes, I am a rocket scientist.
I'm actually in a book. Patrick Burke, a ghost author, wrote a book several years ago about Gettysburg ghosts. And I'm actually I don't know if he named me in the book, but it's like, a rocket scientist. No, really. So far, that's my paranormal claim to fame. But I'm looking forward to at least learning some cool stuff about cryptids this morning, and maybe I'll even contribute a few things.
I'm Sherilyn Lambeth. I am a paranormal researcher and author of Haunted Theaters of the Carolinas. I am with the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society. I'm kind of their staff cryptozoologist in the sense that I'm really the only one who studies that kind of thing with our group. But in my real life, I am a professional costume prop and puppet builder. I've worked on films and TV shows. I used to work with the Muppets on Dinosaurs and Muppet Christmas Carol. I am currently I take care of Sir Purr for the Carolina Panthers, as I like to put it. I'm his veterinarian. So I approach cryptozoology from the point of somebody who's not a professional creature scientist, but I am a professional creature builder. And I have seen a lot of really bad photos and video out there that I know myself and my colleagues could have done much, much better. So I'm a very healthy skeptic. I want there to be a Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster. I've just not yet seen any convincing evidence.
I am Jason Tapp. I run an Instagram and website called Spooky CLT, where I do my best to chronicle Charlotte ghost stories, paranormal, folklore, anything that falls underneath that spooky umbrella, which I would say includes cryptids, and Charlotte has a few of them. I've always approached it off of the way of trying to teach people about these cryptids, because every time you do, you end up giving them a little history lesson along with it, which is my real goal of getting people interested in Charlotte history and culture, things like that. So I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you. See, we do have a book.
All right.
That is for purchase.
If I read it now, I won't be able
Well, true.
to buy it later.
So, let's kind of start off by laying the groundwork of what everybody has a little different idea of what a cryptid is.
Mhm.
So, start off with your idea of what is a cryptid?
What is a cryptid? It's one of those things everybody knows what they are, but nobody really knows what they are. That might be the best definition. I think it's something that isn't a normal critter that you're gonna find running around, and usually a unique critter. Like people talk about Bigfoot as if there's like a Bigfoot. Maybe there's a Bigfoot in Seattle, not a Bigfoot here. Like there's a Loch Ness Monster. There's a Mothman. There isn't like a whole species of Mothman, and just the weird things that go bump in the night. I guess they all seem to be a little bit like a real animal, but not quite. Maybe I don't know. Cryptids are. I came late to the cryptid party. I'm still feeling my way out with the cryptids. I do like Bigfoot though. I married one.
I met him.
My husband is 6'7", and if you didn't see me when you came in, I am tiny. So I do like to say I married Bigfoot.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I just recently did a presentation here in Charlotte called the Sasquatch Show and did a lot of research on Bigfoot and presented about that and some of the other cryptids. But the technical definition is a creature whose existence has not been proven by science. And it's basically, as Karen was saying, creatures like the Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. There are thousands of cryptids in myth and legend. And it's interesting to note that almost every single major culture in the world has a Bigfoot legend of some type or other, or a lake monster legend. So, there's something behind it. I tend to think cryptids are the normal animals in abnormal circumstances, but, we can definitely touch more on that later. But yeah, their existence has not yet apparently been proven by science.
It's going to be hard to word it better than that. So I always just say that it's an animal that has been seen but not discovered, if that makes sense. Because to have a good cryptid story, you have to have people who have seen the thing. But you can't have a good science explanation for it, or else otherwise it would just be an animal. So that is my little tidbit.
I don't know that you can classify it any better than that. So typically, and we will get around to the obviously the two big ones. But there are a lot of other cryptids in the Carolinas. Since you're not from around these parts, do you have one off the norm that's your favorite that you've heard about, or something you're curious about, or?
So I was very interested to find out that you guys have Bigfoot down here, because you typically associate Bigfoot with the mountains. And I know there's mountains down here, but I know I have a friend, acquaintance up in Maryland who does Sasquatching out in Western Maryland, but the Appalachians, I don't feel like are like Bigfoot country. I feel like it's out in like Pacific Northwest or in like Mount Everest. So that was very interesting to hear that Bigfoot is everywhere. I
Yeah.
was surprised.
Well, interestingly enough, just last weekend I don't know if you got to go to this, went to the Bigfoot Festival in Marion, North
No, I
Carolina.
missed it this year. I did go to the first one though.
Yeah, it's a big festival that draws thousands of people from
Mhm.
literally all over the world. They come to the Western North Carolina Bigfoot Festival. But we have a documented, by documented, I mean featured in myth and story and even recent sightings, no less than 15 cryptids in North and South Carolina. We have a Bigfoot. We have the Lake Norman Monster here just outside of Charlotte, which is always interesting because Lake Norman is a man-made lake. We have the Catawba River Runner. We have my favorite, the Lizard Man out of South Carolina, who's quite well known. We've had pterodactyl sightings very recently. There's the Wilmington Sea Serpent, and there was a sighting of something like that just off the North Carolina coast in January. It even made Inside Edition. We have the Yeho of Bald Head Island. I mean, there are a lot of different cryptids and different stories here in this area.
Yeah, so with my focus always just being on like fixated on Charlotte and the surrounding areas, my top three are the Lake Norman Monster, which Sherry, you mentioned, it's a man-made lake, but it's based off the Catawba River, so it's not completely random. And then also we have had sightings of the Wampus cat in this area, at least in the 1900s. And then there is a new thing that is coming around that I can't wait to tell you about because I want to hear your opinion on it.
Okay.
But there have been sightings of a cat-owl hybrid in Charlotte as well. That is more recent, at least in my experience. So I don't know when the best time to talk about that is.
I definitely want to catch up
I
with you about
actually have a
that.
whole section on cats.
Oh,
that makes
Because
sense for North
cats are
Carolina.
very, our football team's the Panthers.
Mhm.
It's cats have a very strong cougars and
I could talk to cats.
Mountain lions.
Yeah.
mountain lions and
Bobcats,
there's a
yeah.
strong history of that in North Carolina. My favorite out of the bunch is one of the lesser known ones in Waynesville, North Carolina. There's the Boojum.
Yeah, Boojum.
Which I absolutely love because it's not very well known. That it kind of gets included with Bigfoot a little bit, but it is basically and it kind of goes into the giant realm of stuff too. But the story behind the Boojum is he was up in the mountains. He lived in a cave when the miners, when the first gold rush or whatever hit Western North Carolina, they started hunting for gems. They didn't find a lot of gold, but they brought gems, a lot of emeralds and sapphires and that kind of stuff out of the mountains. And the Boojum became very enamored with them, along with their liquor. So he would sneak down into town and steal the gems and the liquor that the guys would have. He was also very enthralled with the women folk that were around, but nobody paid him any attention because he was obviously, he was very hairy and that kind of thing. So until this one time he comes down and finds this beautiful young blonde taking a bath in a stream, and she doesn't run away. She actually becomes enamored with him, and the story is they take off to his cave, and there's rumors that they have children and the whole 9 yards. But there's a place in Waynesville called the Boojum Brewery, and they have a mural up on the wall of their rendition of what the Boojum is, and it looks like a giant mountain man with a tail. The legend is a little bit more like a Sasquatch kind of creature, but I always found that very funny. It very well could have just been an old mountain man that came down and terrorized everyone and took their stuff, and it just grew into this amazing legend, amalgamation of legends. And the term hootenanny is actually attributed to the Boojum. There was the girl the blonde that he that took off with him. Her name was Annie, and he would take off and go hunting, and she would hoot to try to get him. So they would hear her down in town going hoot, 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 and he would show back up. But that's where the term hoot nanny actually came from.
Huh.
Anyway.
That's a, yeah.
So okay, in my research and what some of the stuff we've done, cats are a big part of it. Whether it's the Wampus cat or the Saunter out of Iredell County in that area. So what's your thoughts on big cats and as a cryptid in itself?
Well, cats. I mean, cats are stealthy when they want to be. Cats are not stealthy when they don't want to be. And I think even people that are not in like big cat areas. So I swear to God, I saw a cougar in Columbia, Maryland one morning leaving work, like the animal, not a person.
I saw one in California.
Like peeking in somebody's apartment window around the corner from my house. I only ever saw it once. I'm like, what the F was that? I think you don't expect to see them. Then when you do, they're right in your face because cats. So I think, especially in your twilight times, are they the kind of hunters that go out at dusk and dawn? Like a lot of
I think
animals?
most of them typically.
You know?
Yeah,
You're hiking at dusk or dawn and you see this thing slinking around and maybe it's a cougar, maybe it isn't, but you're going to get the hell out of there because either way it's probably going to eat you. So I would think that these big cats could be a lot of these different sightings because they're slinking off in the bushes and all you see is like the back of a tail or the back of an ear. They're very stealthy when they want to be. At least mine always are.
Yeah, mine too. No, and I would agree with that. We do have a lot of big cats here in the Carolinas and in the mountains. We actually do have mountain lions in the mountains. We've got bobcats. We've got, and it's interesting, you talk about the cats. Yeah, we do have the panthers. Our transportation here in Charlotte is called cats. And for a brief period of time, our basketball team were the bobcats. So I'm like, what's the deal? But touching on the big one, I guess, the Wampus cat. And just a brief backstory, the Wampus cat was a Cherokee legend that apparently a young Cherokee maiden was curious about the secret, tribal meetings that the elders and the braves would engage in. So one night she disguised herself in the skin of a wildcat to sneak up on the meeting and see what was going on. Well, the elders caught her, and as punishment, they turned her into a big cat, the Wampus cat. And it's actually quite a well-known cryptid. If anybody's even seen Harry Potter, it's even mentioned in Harry Potter in their bestiary. So it's quite well known. But I thought it was interesting, and this ties back to me thinking it's normal animals in abnormal circumstances. In 2006, I think it was, there was a sighting of a strange creature, a fox cat-like creature sighted outside the Tycho plant outside of Raleigh. It was actually a Fuquay-Varina, but very few people know where that is. So I'll say outside of Raleigh. And reading the interviews in the paper, there were several people who commented, we figured it was probably a Wampus cat. And I thought it was very interesting that was the thought people immediately jumped to. That, I was saying, it must have been, a fox or a bobcat. No, people were actually saying it was a Wampus cat. Well, a state biologist did some investigation, and it turned out it was actually a type of creature called a Samson fox, which is a normal fox, regular fox, that has a rare genetic condition that causes it to lose most of its coat, most of its fur. And so, again, normal animals in abnormal circumstances, we're not used to seeing foxes that look like that. I mean, it didn't have its big bushy tail. It didn't have its thick coat. So, it looks weird to us, but it's just a fox with hair loss, basically.
And staying on the topic of the Wampus cat, what I found is I've always kind of referenced the Charlotte Observer when I do my research for the Charlotte area, and I found the Wampus cat mentioned a few times, and each time it is drastically different. So back in like the early 1900s, there was a situation where a town was terrified of a Wampus cat, and they found out that it was an actual guy who was going around pranking people, and what he was doing was taking the hooves of horses, putting them on sticks, and like pushing them in the ground with like a little section on the back as well to create a new type of footprint. And then he was also putting different animal furs onto fences as if it was caught and catched. And then he was saying that it was a Wampus cat going around, and they caught him in the act. But these hooves are definitely not cat hooves. So it's like, why would you immediately go to it being a Wampus cat? And then also a few decades later, there was another sighting of a Wampus cat, but the description was more of like a Bigfoot, where it was like a 7-foot tall hairy man who was walking around a public park and took a nap on a bench. And they were like, it was the early 1900s, so people were terrified. And but they called him a wampus. So I think that for this era, our area culturally, anything that can't really be explained kind of falls into that wampus cat description. And then lastly, another one that I found that I thought was more in line with the big cat mythology, I guess, was a sheriff was chasing a big cat in an area of town, and it went underneath the building, and he blindly shot his 6-shooter underneath the house, like all 6 times. Heard big screams, put a stick in there, the stick disappeared, and then when the next day when he had backup, no one could find anything underneath the house. So they wrote that off as a wampus cat sighting as well. So there's definitely the mythology, but when the people took that name and ran with it, it is very loose onto what we actually think the wampus cat is. I love the pictures where it's like the big cat with the 6 legs.
Yeah. Yes.
But I've never once found a story where they're seeing a sighting and it includes those extra 2 legs.
Yeah.
So it's interesting the way that we take those words and we roll with them. I do want to also add that the Beast of Bladenboro is also a big cat story, or the town of Bladenboro was having incidents of cattle and goat mutilation. And next thing you know, when the mayor is announcing that we have a big cat attack, people from all over that area of North Carolina came in with their guns and their rifles trying to hunt down this big cat, to the point where the mayor had to say, like, back off, everyone.
Knock it off.
I was being dramatic on purpose, but I don't want anyone to get killed because of this.
Yeah, that's kind of our own version of the chupacabra.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and to make it even more dramatic, the technical term is the vampire beast.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's. I mean, the mayor later on admitted that he really played it up a little bit.
I can respect that though.
No, yeah.
Trying to get business in a small town, hell yeah.
They still do the boost the beast.
And a little bit of the story
festival,
behind that is there was a circus in Virginia that had 2 black tigers escape. And they think that there was one of them killed in Virginia not too long after that, but they think the second one is what actually was in Bladenboro. But then there ended up being a 3rd one killed too, so we're not real sure if the circus actually admitted how much what happened, or how much got out, or what, or and for people in that time, a giant black tiger roaming through the town would obviously terrify a lot of people because they've never seen stuff like that.
And a panther is just a black cougar.
Yeah.
Which we do have those in this area. And my sister-in-law, she actually, when she was visiting her family in the Calabash area, she actually saw
That's why you reacted.
Yeah, she to this day, I mean, granted it was 2 decades ago, but she swears on her life that she saw a big black panther-sized cat in a tree in Calabash. So when you said that, I'm like, hell yeah, she wasn't making this shit up.
Yeah, she was right in
My dad and I were driving home. We were coming down Calabash Road. And I live right off Calabash Road, and we saw a cougar just cross the road in front of us. We were like, what?
Yeah. So, I mean, North Carolina, we have plenty of those big cat species native. Granted, the numbers have drastically declined over the past 100 years. So what once was commonplace for people to see is now very, very rare. So even if it started getting extinct in the 50s, people after that, they wouldn't see stuff like this. So it would make sense that their first instinct would to jump to the supernatural.
Well, and big black animals in general, especially if you're talking like in the British Isles folklore, and I know there's a lot of Scots Irish immigrants in the Appalachians, it's an omen of death. Big black animals. So to see a big black dog or a big black cat or a big black cryptid, that's spooky.
Yeah.
And you don't want nothing to do with it.
And kind of tying off the cats and the immigrant stuff, there's a story about the devil dog of Vallecrucis, which is an immigrant preacher came over and built a church right outside of, or kind of outside of Boone a little bit. And there's a famous story of a devil dog there, along with some other weird, mountain people only had stories to tell. So, and as you tell a story, regardless, even nowadays, it starts kind of getting bigger and more descriptive, and then you get it in the hands of someone like us, and we can
And you write a book about it.
we can really expand it. Something that I'm not sure is a cryptid, if it falls under that category, but North Carolina also has North and South Carolina has a very close relationship with mermaids.
Yes.
Are mermaids a cryptid, or
I don't know. I mean, they're definitely a cartoon. Mermaids are definitely folklore. I was actually at RavenCon in Virginia in April, and there was an anthropologist, like she's an archaeologist, anthropologist. She has degrees in this shit. She did a big study on mermaids and where the mermaid myth came from, and it actually comes out of Africa. It was fascinating. So I'm torn between calling them a cryptid and calling them maybe some kind of mythological god, entity, critter, religious thing. I don't know. I think, modernly speaking, yeah, they're probably cryptids. I would believe they exist out there. Maybe not looking like Ariel in any of her forms, but for sure, I mean, the ocean is so deep, and we've explored so little of it. There's got to be more intelligence out there besides octopuses and whales and dolphins. I'm sure.
I mean, they only just saw giant squid.
Yeah, the Humboldt squid.
They
Yeah.
finally proved that krakens exist.
Yeah.
Although if the mermaids know how to keep those seashell bras off, I would
Yeah.
like some tips because I've never been able to get one to work.
No, and that is a good question. And like the Wampus cat, mermaids run the gamut of what they look like. I mean, we are, in our modern day, we think the fairy tale version of Ariel, the beautiful maiden with the seashell bra and whatever. But again, and I'll use this as an example just because it happened to be on TV this morning, Harry Potter, you look at the mermaids and mermen in the lake there, they're vicious looking merfolk. And the actual legends of merfolk, they are pretty vicious. They're not these beautiful things that are going to sing to you. They're going to sit on a rock and sing to you to draw you in, and then they're going to drown you and eat you. And there's the story, again, in the mountains. There's a large river that runs through western North Carolina called the French Broad. And there's actually a story of a creature called the French Broad siren, and which I guess would kind of fall under the mermaid. And that was the whole story, that this creature would appear like as a beautiful woman to the hunters and trappers and people that lived in that area. And as soon as they approached, it would grab them and drag them into the river and drown them. So, I tend to think that, yes, in that sense, merfolk probably are cryptids because they kind of fall in that shadowy realm. They're not really people. They're not really animals. They're kind of in that shadowy realm in between. So I certainly would classify merfolk as cryptids.
Same, just going off of, seen not discovered, where people have claimed to seen it. I've always subscribed to either like two ways of belief. Either it's like parallel evolution where, we developed on land, they developed in, the water. Or also, like, if you ever seen a beluga whale, that thing has kneecaps. It's the weirdest thing. So it 100% makes sense to me that you get a bunch of drunk sailors out on the open ocean and their minds start to play tricks on them. Or they just like sharing stories or have loose morals.
Well, if you've been out at sea for years on end,
yeah. So
dugong starts to look pretty good.
We're talking about this, it could go either way. It does make sense that there would be intelligent life forms that kind of represent us in a sea form way, but also, we're talking about mythology as well, so it could be both.
So I use that kind of as a segue to talk about our famous water. And we'll start right over with you, Jason, since you have an affinity for Normie. So let's talk a little bit about our one of our big lake creatures.
Yeah, so there is the Lake Norman monster. And as Sharon mentions, Lake Norman is not very old. It's a man-made lake. when Duke Energy was creating like their powerhouse in the Carolinas, they made 11 different dams along the Catawba River, and the largest of the lakes being Lake Norman. And since its creation, people have claimed to see different variations of lake monsters in the lake, where you can even go to lakenormanmonster.com and see decades worth of sightings. There are a few pictures. None of them are good. But you can talk to different people. There's divers that have found catfish they claim to be the size of SUVs. The lake does have a lot of different exotic fish in it, including alligator gar, which are just terrifying to look at. If you read the children's book that I read to my daughter last night, they believe that a dinosaur egg was uncovered when they were excavating the lake. So there's a lot of different theories of what it could be. Personally, I love that we have this lore because, number one, I get to tell people that the lake is man-made and kind of talk about the history of it a little bit. But also, people are seeing stuff that they can't explain out there. But just because they can't explain it doesn't mean it is a cryptid. It just means that they are not fishermen and they don't really know what fish are supposed to look like in that area. With that being said, though, there is funny things going on in Lake Norman currently, where Fish and Wildlife are finding that a lot of the fish they're finding do have mutations and are even developing both gender parts, possibly because of their exposure to the nuclear facility that is on the lake, or because the lake is used as a dumping ground for sewage and beyond.
Good thing this isn't a ghost panel.
I was getting ready to suggest that was the lizard man.
Right.
We'll get into him in a minute for Charles' sake.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts on the Lake Norman monster.
Sure.
Yes, and I agree with Jason. And in fact, the person that runs LakeNormanMonster.com and wrote the book is a good friend of mine, Matt Myers. And we have talked at length about Normie. But as Jason said, it's true. Lake Norman was actually built as the cooling reservoir for the McGuire nuclear facility there. And so who knows what kind of creatures are being mutated and turning into things, again, normal animals in abnormal circumstances. But I touched on this briefly. There was a Catawba Nation legend of a creature basically called the Catawba River Runner. And so it was a river monster basically in the Catawba River. And one story speculates that perhaps when they dammed the Catawba River, that's how they made Lake Norman, by damming the Catawba River. Perhaps the river runner just got trapped in Lake Norman, and decided he preferred lake living to river living, and basically stayed on, because the lake is fairly warm, again, because of the nuclear facility, and it's a good breeding ground for a lot of different creatures. The huge catfish, as you said, and Jason's right, alligator gar are terrifying.
Yes.
They are
They got teeth and
absolutely
everything.
terrifying.
Yeah.
So, someone who may not be familiar with what they look like could easily see one break the water and be like, oh my gosh, and could easily think that might be a monster of some kind.
Overgrown would be even worse.
Yeah, even worse. Yeah, even big catfish are terrifying. There's Matt was telling me that a Japanese crew was actually at Lake Norman quite a few years ago, but they were doing a documentary on Normie, and as they were filming underwater, something enormous swam over them, and they're like, "Ooh, was that the lake monster? Or was it a big catfish?" 6 of one, half a dozen the other. So yeah, it's I suspect there is a Lake Norman monster. I think there are a lot of Lake Norman monsters, but I think they're basically big fish.
Yes. And then putting lake monsters aside, the lake itself is pretty terrifying when you start to think about it. On my Instagram account, in the link tree, I have a link to the School of Davidson University has a interactive map of the lake where you can see all the different things that used to be there that are now underwater. And those things include there's like 13 different cemeteries that were allegedly moved, but the area had a lot of plantations on it. So if they are moving the cemeteries that we knew about, then how many did they skip or that we didn't know about them?
I guarantee you they just moved the headstones.
Oh, 100%.
Probably, yeah.
But there's churches and buses
Like whole towns.
and bridges and whole infrastructure down there. So even if you were to go scuba diving, the Lake Norman monster is not your biggest concern
Yeah.
of the weirdest things that
Good
you'll see
point.
down there. And then one last story, there was a gentleman that did lake cruises out on the water, Captain Gus, who recently passed away.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh,
I
that's so
know.
sad. I
Um,
didn't know that.
his big story was that there was a guy, when the lake was created, there was a guy who was a fish farmer, and he started meddling with crossbreeding fish, trying to make the beefiest thing that he could sell at markets. So carp and catfish, trying to cross mutate them. And then when people found out about it, he closed up shop and just let everything free. So now the larger than life fish that we're seeing out in the lake is because of that. With that being said, though, Captain Gus was a very eccentric man who was a great storyteller. So who knows?
You can make it sound good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could make a goldfish sound good.
Do you have anything? Yeah. Do you know about Normie?
Or lake monsters
Or
in
lake
general.
Lake monsters in
I
general.
never heard of Normie, and that's cool. I'm gonna come down here and do like a lake tour.
Absolutely.
Um,
I'll take you.
Lake monsters are cool, but like you said, they're like everywhere. So we all know about Loch Ness Monster, but there's Chessie in the Chesapeake Bay. There's Champy up in Lake Champlain, and there are all these sort of dinosaur-looking things. And I think that's interesting. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of them are just big fish,
Mm-hmm.
and fishermen like to talk, especially when you get them
Oh, yeah.
drinking. But then sometimes you wonder, especially when you look at the videos from Loch Ness, which is a really long, thin lake. If you're not familiar with it, it's very deep. That you get wakes, and even not boat wakes, you get wind, and the wind kicks up the water, and the water's kind of rippling. And every time I see one of these, they're always grainy videos from like 300 miles away. Look at these little ripples. Well, how do you know that's not just water wake? Well, it couldn't possibly. There was no wake. The wind blows. So I don't know. I think sometimes it might be natural phenomena that we're thinking might be a cryptid.
Mm-hmm.
And other times it might be fish, and other times fishermen. And I think y'all got kaiju down here though. If you got a lake next to the nuclear power
I wouldn't be
plant.
surprised.
I have to come see this
Yeah.
now. This is my kind of weird.
And then one more note too is this area is filled of Scot-Irish Presbyterians. So some people have thought that perhaps
Always
Yeah.
the church people.
That-
What?
I'm telling you.
Oh,
that one of them-
Always the church people.
Yeah.
so either they brought their mythology with them, they're by a lake and they want to tell stories from that they grew up with, or that one of them snuck a Nessie egg down here in North Carolina, and now we have the perfect conditions to create our own Loch Ness monster. So
I mean, if you look at Nessie though, a lot of the accounts about Nessie really only started like in the 1920s-ish,
Mhm.
and before that there wasn't really a lake monster there. So, but who knows? There's a lot of cryptids over in the UK. I'm a little bit into that stuff when we go over there, and that's my ancestry. And God knows the Irish people, when you get them drinking,
Oh yeah. I'll tell
they
all
will
sorts
tell
of
you
stories.
a story that will last for days.
My step grandfather was part of the Army Corps of Engineers,
Mm.
and he helped build the dam at Philpott Lake in Virginia. And they tell stories of giant catfish.
Mhm.
I don't think there's a Philpott Lake monster, but they tell stories of catfish as big as Volkswagen.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So they get to the bottom of those dams and just feed.
That's-
feed.
yep.
no predators down there
Yeah.
for them, so they can grow as big as they need. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There's no predator friends.
Just us.
Yeah.
I'm not doodling a catfish as big as my car.
So while we're talking about scaly stuff, Shirley, you want to start off talking about the lizard man?
Well, I'll tell you, I actually have a special connection to the lizard man because my mom grew up in Lamar, South Carolina, which is right next to Bishopville and the Scape Ore Swamp, where the lizard man was first sighted. And my uncle actually knew Sheriff Liston Truesdale, who was the sheriff that took the first report of the lizard man. But the lizard man is probably one of our most famous cryptids. He's been featured on the History Channel. There's been a lot of documentaries about him. There's a lot of books about him. And he, like many, is a very recent cryptid. This cryptid was not first sighted until 1988. And the story goes that people have seen this giant 7-foot-tall, bipedal, scaly lizard-like creature with glowing red eyes coming out of the Scape Ore Swamp near Bishopville, South Carolina. He's apparently damaged cars. He's apparently left these big footprints. There's even a cast of a footprint someone took at the South Carolina Cotton Museum and near that area. And it's there have been a few really bad pictures of the lizard man. And there's speculation, well, of course, the story always goes that this is probably just a hoax. I mean, if your car has been attacked by something, you're driving home late at night, maybe you've had a few, instead of saying, oh, I lost control and went off the side of the road. No, you're probably like, oh my gosh, it was a lizard man. And there was a report on the History Channel. I can't remember when the documentary came out, but there was a couple who lived near Bishopville whose car was parked in their driveway, and apparently it got attacked pretty fiercely by something. There were claw marks on it. There were dents in it. There was blood. There were blood stains on it, and something got it. Was it the lizard man? Who knows?
Could have been a bear if they left some fast food in their back seat.
Yeah.
It would be very anti-vehicle.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough. So, yeah, and of course, stories like all cryptids, stories of the lizard man have grown in the telling, and I don't think there have been any very recent sightings, but the story still lives on.
What do you think the origin is? Like, have we tried to explain where it
So
comes from?
one of the things we researched for the book, the story is that a young lady was riding down the road one night, and it's conflicting reports whether she was a little inebriated or what, and she wrecked her car,
Yep.
and she claimed that the lizard man ran across the road in front of her, and that's what caused it.
Yep.
And that was the very first. Is that right, Charles?
Well, the first one was a guy who was driving home and he stopped and he got a
Flat tire. Christopher Davis was his name.
And he was fixing the flat tire, and all of a sudden he got attacked by a normal person would have said an alligator came out of the swamp. He complained, so when he got home, his bumper had been ripped off, the spare tire had been punctured, claw mark on it. He gives the report to, I guess he'd been drinking giant, scaly, half alligator, half man creature with glowing red eyes destroyed my car.
Yep.
The sheriff said, okay,
Sounds good to me.
All right.
we're gonna write this down.
No further questions.
And due to the infamous map that I ended up creating, I noticed that every time there's a lizard man sighting, it's a very noticeable address that's easy to find. Like nobody stumbles across a lizard man in the middle of the swamp. It's always on the side of a road or an address.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
The lizard man pops up where he's easy to find.
Yeah.
That's what I've always noticed. You know?
And that seems to be a very Carolinas cryptid. I don't know.
There's no other.
There's no
There's no
other-
other half lizard, half person anywhere else.
He is
Damn
unique
straight.
to Carolinas. Yeah.
Real quick, can you tell the story of the map?
Yeah, so when the eclipse was coming across the U.S. in 2016, I worked for the South Carolina Emergency Management Agency, and they activated us because they thought literally 1 million people were going to come to South Carolina and stare at the sun. And so we were preparing.
Sounds
we were
right.
preparing for it, and NASA, as a joke, put out these 2 maps. One of them was the best place to see Bigfoot during the eclipse.
Oh, how do I never see that?
And I thought that was hilarious being a geek, and so I printed it out and I gave it to my public information officer and said, check this out. And he said, well, can you do this for the lizard man? And I, being a damn Yankee, I said, what's the lizard man? So I started doing research and I found all these news articles about the lizard man, and that's when I realized that they all have places I can map. They're on the side of the road of a highway or a house. So I mapped all the locations and I did this real map of like lizard icons. And sure enough, because it's right where the swamp is, it came right next to the eclipse path.
Crazy.
So I made this map, and what got us into trouble, I was like, we don't know if lizard people become active during, solar eclipses. You should stay ever vigilant. And I gave it to my public information officer. He thought it was funny, stuck our logo on it.
Oh,
and
no.
tweeted it.
Oh.
I don't know anything about social media. I'm like, haha, no one's going to millions of people tweet. Well, there's nothing going on in the world that week except for the eclipse. It goes nuts. And the AP News picks it up, everything. USA Today picks it up, the BBC picks it up.
Yes.
All of a sudden, we got news people from Japan or calling our office going, we'd like to hear about the lizard people running around South Carolina. It's like,
Send them our way.
Yeah.
it's like, it goes insane. And I'm like, you got to pull this tweet down. He's like, that's not how social media works.
Yeah.
It's
It's done.
too late.
Can't put that genie
So
back.
everybody's loving this except for our director and the head of the state law enforcement of South Carolina that thought that we were making fun of terrorism because it was like, if you see something, say something. So we had to like go, know this is a joke that kind of went out of hand, but if you still to this day Google SCEMD/lizardman, you'll find
I'm
the tweet
totally
with my
looking
map on
that
it.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
you-
gonna look that up. I'm gonna look that up and print it out and take it to work.
Same.
I work at Goddard Space Place and I work for NASA, so I'm totally gonna put that on my camera.
Yeah,
Well, and it's interesting to note, you were just talking about lizard man being unique to the Carolinas, but real brief side thing, UFOlogy, the study of UFOs, so don't we apparently have a race of lizard men living
yeah.
under so, you have to. Yeah,
We
all
pay
the-
them our taxes.
Exactly.
So-
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, maybe lizard man just like, I want to live on the surface for a while.
I'm gonna come out of the swamp.
He was on vacation.
He's on vacation.
You know, a lot of people
On his way to Myrtle
retire now.
Beach.
Just on his way to the beach, yeah.
So, I mean, we're kind of getting close to the end here, so let's talk about what everybody wants to talk about. That's big.
Okay. Oh, well,
Well,
can I talk about my cat owl first?
Yeah, please,
sure.
yeah.
All right. So, once again, I run Spooky CLT, an Instagram account, talking about Charlotte ghosts. And there is another local podcast to Charlotte called The Katie Black Show. And she does live events where she'll go to, in the area of town called Noda, there's this rhino market. She'll set up shop and she will just do like a live podcast, and she'll bring on different hosts and have hosts or guests and have different audience interaction. And she had 2 guests lined up, and at the end of her like 4 questions, she always asks, has anything ever unexplained happened to you? And both of the guests that day, who have never met each other, both shared their experience about how within the past 15 years in Charlotte, they were out and about one evening, and the first guy was driving with his friends in South End, the Starmont area of South End, and he said they were driving on the road. It was in the middle of the night, and a cat started walking across the road, so they stopped to not hit it. And when they did that, it sprouted wings and actually flew at the car and scratched his windshield. Unexplained, he said nothing like that's ever happened to him ever again. Then the next guest, when he got asked the same question, he's like, there's no way that guy said that, because one time I was walking in, he was coming from Plaza to where the metropolitan area is, where the Target and the BJ's and Spirit Halloween during October. And he said he was walking by an active construction site and he saw a cat on a fence walking along with him, and then when it stopped, he saw like the tail go down, but then the head turns around 180 degrees, looked at him, sprouted wings, and then flew away. So these 2 guys who have never talked to each other before, the weirdest thing that happened to them in Charlotte was almost the same story. And it's a miracle that I was just happened to be in the crowd for this show. So my jaw dropped, and I made a post about it on my Instagram account. It didn't get much action when I first posted it, but around a year later, I posted it again with a TikTok, and that's when people started saying, like, no freaking way, this happened to me in this area of North Carolina, this happened to me in the mountains, where people were describing different cat-owl hybrid sightings that they had or possibly had. So I wanted to ask you guys, have y'all heard anything similar to that, or?
Yeah, I had heard the story of the owl cat, and it got kind of tied in with the Wampus cat legend, because again, it was and I don't use this word lightly, but it's the Native American legend. We all know the skinwalker.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the theories is, again, this is a creature that takes the skin of another animal or a human and appears and then turns into its real form or a different form when it's discovered and flies away.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I can't remember what the name is they're calling it. I'd always just heard of it as an owl cat, but there is a name for it, and I can't remember what I will look it up
Great.
and let you know. But yes, I had heard those stories, and I heard you mentioned Charlotte, and I'd heard them other stories about North Carolina. So I don't think it was just native to the Charlotte area or
Mm-hmm.
prevalent to the Charlotte area, but it appears to be kind of regional.
Yeah, awesome.
I have not seen it though. I would
Yeah.
love to see it.
Same.
I mean, there are legends in North Carolina of thunderbirds and such. But it's interesting. We are actually filming a movie right now about the Cherokee legend of owls, and good and bad kind of sides to
Mhm.
that. It's not a documentary. It's a it's a fantasy horror kind of movie. But I had not heard about the owl cat, so we'll have to do some research. I don't know if Jeff has or not.
Yeah, it's a new one on me. Although it's interesting that people saw it so close.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I think about some of these weird cryptids, and I read the Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, which is nothing, I think, like that movie. Not that I've seen the movie. And there's some talk about the Mothman as like a harbinger and an omen, and I got to thinking about, well, is it sort of these otherworldly? Every culture has their otherworldly creatures, right? There's fairies, there's brownies, there's pixies, all these sorts of things. Like, are these cryptids maybe some of them maybe those kind of things? These
Mhm.
owl cat things, maybe some of the swamp creatures, maybe they're not this worldly or this dimensionally, but they're still, living in some other realm of possibility. Things like that give me weird looks in certain spaces. Like, as I said yesterday, like, you do not roll up to a MUFON convention and tell them you think alien abductions are fairies. They will laugh you out of the room. Everybody's got their own crazy.
So it's interesting that you didn't know that North Carolina was a Bigfoot heaven. But regardless of the fact that Marion does the Bigfoot Festival, the majority of our Bigfoot sightings seem to be in the foothills.
Mount
Well, it's
Marion,
Cleveland County.
Wilkesboro, yeah.
Yeah.
They like the
Uwharrie
mountains.
National Park, in a little bit south of me in High Point area, High Point Thomas area. So we have a deep history with Bigfoot too. Jason, you want to start us off talking a little bit about that?
So I'm gonna get off topic real quick, but my thoughts on Bigfoot have been changing recently, where, and I'm saying this to a crowd, and I haven't like fully figured it out myself, but I'm starting to believe that there's a little bit of a rewriting history situation going on when it comes to Bigfoot. I believe that there's possibly giants who lived amongst us in the past that was normal. Abraham Lincoln wrote in his personal diary that there were mounds filled with giant bones. People think that he was referring to mammoths, but he doesn't say that specifically. And then a lot of our North American folklore do base around men who were bigger than life. We have Paul Bunyan, who's now viewed almost as the brawny man with, a plaid shirt and a clean cut guy with a beard and an axe. But when you're telling those lumberjack stories, I believe that it was possible that he was just a big dude that when he was coming across these lumberjackers who were, cutting down all the trees in North America, making that trade, they came across an intelligent being that probably helped them knock down trees. There have been articles about tribes of Indians who were like 7 foot, 8 foot tall, different things. So when it's not uncommon for us, like the history of America to be kind of rewritten by the colonizers. So I think it's possible that there were tribes of giant people who we now take those sightings and lore and equate it to something supernatural that may have just been part of our history. Please be forgiving of this thought process as it's still coming along.
No, that's valid.
But I think it's crazy that we have all these legends of these men who are like larger than life in folklore, and now our current legends are beasts that were larger than life who are doing similar things, walking around the woods, interacting with trees and things like that. And then just one more comment: when looking through the Charlotte Observer, there was an article in the 1930s of a barefooted man who was stealing lumber from townsfolk, and he was walking into a river, and that's how he was escaping, because they couldn't track his big footprints. But they thought that he was about 7 foot tall, and he was just stealing like lumber from people's backyards, which is interesting. They didn't say it's Bigfoot, but I'm like, okay, the story.
He had big feet. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my mixed view on what Bigfoot could possibly be.
Well, and I'm with you on a lot of that. As I said, my views on Bigfoot have changed dramatically over the years as well. One of the big things behind the legend of Bigfoot is nobody's ever discovered a Bigfoot body. or bones or anything like that. And one thought is, well, perhaps they bury their dead like we do, which would lend to the fact that they may be more human than we think. Giant 7-foot tall skeletons have been discovered. I can't remember the name, but there's a cave in Kentucky that they excavated where they had 7-foot tall skeletons. There was also a story, this was a while ago, where a farmer found a 7-foot tall skeleton on his property. And for some reason, I've never understood, those stories seem to get covered up and the bones disappear. Why is this? But there's also a thought that perhaps Bigfoot isn't actually an actual creature, but an interdimensional creature, which would also explain why all of the photos of Bigfoot are blurry. That perhaps he phases in and out of existence, and that would lead to the thought that, that's why we wouldn't find bodies or anything. But, a real quick aside for me, the famous Bigfoot Patterson film, we all know that film, yeah? I could point out 50 different things that make me think that film is fake. It's been debated for years, but I'm like, no.
Which has ties to Charlotte.
Yeah, Morris
Yes, it does.
costume.
Morris
Morris
costume.
costumes, that guy claims that he made that.
That he made the suit. But just an interesting bit of trivia for you, when they were, because this is the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, and when they were shooting the indoor forest scenes in the big redwood forest in California, Chewbacca, Peter Mayhew, the actor playing Chewbacca, had to be surrounded at all times by crew in orange vests so that he would not be accidentally mistaken for Bigfoot and shot. That is a true story.
That is America right
That
there.
is America. Yeah.
I love
Well,
it.
you heard 2 years ago that there was, in the upstate of South Carolina, there was a guy, a practicing shaman that was in all furs and a headdress
Yep.
walking around the upstate mountains, and the state police had to put a bulletin out saying, please do not shoot Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to note in Texas, it is actually against the law to shoot Bigfoot.
Yeah, we need that for North
We
Carolina
really
too.
do. So
Your
yes.
thoughts?
I never thought about the tall person thing, which is weird because I married one. But
You are married to Bigfoot.
You are
I am
married to
married to
Bigfoot.
But I was just sitting here thinking when you're talking like, well, duh. I mean, okay, we know we have 7.5 people now. They all play basketball, but they didn't just get born with the NBA. Lincoln was pretty tall. George Washington was, I think, 6'4". William Wallace was not,
Yeah.
Mel Gibson, no way.
Yeah.
William Wallace was 6'7", like my
Mhm.
husband. He was a big guy.
Yeah.
And we all think that people were so little back then, and most of them were, but there were big people throughout history. So it makes sense to me that there could be isolated tribes of people that just because their genetic pool isn't that diverse, that these traits keep getting bred into them. So you have a whole race of Native Americans who are 7 feet tall. Like that would start to make a lot of sense to me on a mundane level, and then the otherworldly thing too. But yeah, wow, I never thought about tall
I think
people through history. That's cool.
I think here recently, the Smithsonian finally admitted that they had giant bones.
I think you might be right.
yeah.
It might have been part of that same documentary I was watching about the Kentucky caves. Yeah.
So we just got a couple more minutes. Does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists?
Anyone see anything weird lately?
Yeah, tell us your cryptid story if you have one. No?
I kind of
It's a
have one.
Sunday morning crew.
Yeah. I'm just glad we have one.
You
I was
married
telling-
one.
Yeah, you married one.
I was telling Cheryl last night where I work at Goddard Space Flight Center up in Maryland. There's an agricultural research area just behind it, the Beltsville Agricultural Preserve, I think. And they do a lot of farm research, not on animals per se, but a lot of crop research. So I was driving down the road, the back road that goes through there to get to the back gate of the base one night. And I'm driving along and I see about this high off the ground, this beady little red eyes. And they flash at me and it runs away. And I'm driving work. I'm like, what the fuck was that? So I went and did what I needed to do and then went back home. I had a page to fix something. And I've been Googling for years, what reflects red eyes back. And my husband's like, well, it couldn't be a raccoon. It couldn't be a possum. They all reflect back like green. So if anybody knows what little critters reflect red eyes back at your headlights, I would love to know. I have no idea what it was. I didn't see anything but the eyes. I was not drunk. I was going work. I don't know what that was.
We're not your boss. You don't have to.
It was like 2 a.m. I got a page to go turn our overnight monitoring software back on. So I was in a bad mood and I had to go drive it into that. I'm like, what the hell was that? Yeah, so.
The only animal I can think of is a better fox. Other than this, they're not native at all.
It's fine. It's my,
Yeah, I'm a big animal
she's my
lover.
preacher person.
Oh.
We do have foxes on the base now. I've seen
Well,
one. I've seen its poop, and I've actually seen one across the board.
most North American foxes have the green eye reflecting.
Yeah,
and a
that's
little
what we
bit
were
of white.
thinking. Like this
But
was,
Spanish foxes have red
This
because
was
they're in the
definitely-
desert.
Mm.
yeah, I've seen regular red foxes
Yeah.
on the base. And I know we have raccoons. I've seen raccoons. There's a striped owl, banded owl, whatever they're called. I know there's one around. I've got feathers from it. Plenty of deer. So yeah, I don't know what that was. Could have been anything. I didn't see anything with the eyes. But that was interesting.
All right, we gotta wrap this up. Want to tell everybody where they can find you the rest of the day, if they can, or?
So I am in here again at 10:30 for the RTFM, the Paranormal Equipment Really Work panel. And I think that's my last panel of the weekend. I'm also repping a new con in the Williamsburg area in January called Convivial. Don't let that fool you. We're all the con staff are veterans of cons and organizing cons. We have a Kickstarter that's going to come out in, I think, a few more weeks, and we already have a guest of honor. That would be author Keith DeCandido. He's a science fiction author. He's done a lot of media time work for some different shows. He did a lot of Star Trek books. He did some supernatural books. I'm not sure what else he's written. I enjoy his work. He's a personal friend. If you're interested, please come and get this. We have a QR code that'll take you to our website. It should be a good time.
Sure.
I have another panel at 10:30. I'm actually doing a special guest interview.
Woo!
So I'll be doing that. And the rest of the day, I will probably be at the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society table out in the hallway across from the dealer's room.
This is my last panel, so I won't be talking about anything else for the day. But you can find my stuff at Spooky CLT on Instagram or spookyclt.com. Cher and I are also featured on a reoccurring news segment called a Supernatural CLT. One of the things we talk about is the Lake Norman Monster, as well as other local legends and North Carolina lore. So that's all available on YouTube. And then lastly, one thing that I'm doing for Charlotte as a whole is in town, there's Elmwood Cemetery, which is the largest cemetery. There is a headstone of a man named Charlie Hawk who was killed by a lion. In quotations, maybe it was a Wampus cat. It's not, but his headstone says Charlie Hawk killed by a lion. And currently the headstone is broken into pieces and knocked off its base. So I'm raising money to have that fixed. So when you guys go out and visit Elmwood Cemetery, you could still see a headstone of a man named Charlie Hawk who was killed by a lion. And the way to donate to elmwoodcemetery.com, you can find all the links through my website, spookyclt.com, or the Instagram at spookyclt.
And you can find all of our stuff at wreakhavocproductions.com. I have copies of the book for sale for $20. Look at the price. If you would like a copy, I have a panel at 12 o'clock that is kind of tied in with this. I'm going to be talking about mutants, specifically the X-Men. Not sciencey mutants, but X-Men, because I'm a comic book nerd as
Maybe
well.
some of those Bigfoot sightings with Wolverine.
I mean,
Beast.
Well, yeah,
It would be
maybe
Beast.
Maybe
Okay,
Beast.
maybe the people scratching up your car.
He's not short to us short people.
Wolverine's still pretty short. Yeah, he's very old.
Not Hugh
Yeah.
Jackman, but yeah.
No, the character, not
The real one.
Thank y'all so much.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you very much for coming to our panel this morning. That was a good panel.
That was good. That was fun.
I will
He's
see
only
what,
like
if I can
5
find some of the info that I had about the
The
owl cat.
Yeah, so I talked to another podcaster who says he's a cryptozoologist, but that term's a little loose.
Yes, I definitely want to get that.
Hell yeah,
I
that's awesome.
totally want to get that.
Yeah, if you Google a CP lizard man, it's like you can see all the news articles about it, but you'll eventually find the tweet.
Perfect.
Love it.
I am totally going to do that.
And this is the name that he found for it.
I'm in it.
But I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
No, it's not.
Good. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah,
I think you just
I
made this up.
I mean, that might be. I'm not familiar with that one. But like I said, I'd always want it
Nice.
tied in with the
That
Wampus
covers a lot
cat.
of
Yeah.
good
So
stuff, too.
that's why I'm
The only
Right.
pause I have about that is
There's
they
a
described it as like a house cat size and not like
Yeah,
a big
not like a big
cat.
cat.
I think I understand where David Weber got six-legged cats from now.
Okay.
I think they're right in
Well,
the
it's interesting. There's a high school, I think,
But we're
community
talking
college,
about doing
whose
another-
team mascot, they're
Yeah.
the Wampus Cats.
Yeah,
And the
doing Eastern
statue
Science
of the
Cats
mascot
competition.
has 6 legs.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So,
There's
yeah.
a Wampus
Yeah.
Cat Music Festival.
There's a lot of good stuff
Yes.
in Raleigh. There's
But-
a lot of
Well,
good
always good to
stuff.
see you, Jason.
There's a lot
You
of
as
stuff in
well.
Wilmington.
I'm gonna hang out for a little
Oh,
Talk
good.
about
Okay, so hopefully
Blackbeard in
if I
there.
come across,
Okay.
I'll
That
do
he
some
is from
research
Ohio.
on my stuff and see if I can find it.
Your interview, do you know what's
Yep.
the focus
Well,
for it?
last
I'm
year
best
here,
special guest
we
interview.
did,
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
a
I'm
panel
not really
about
sure what they're
why.
gonna ask
I
me.
know, it's because I'm
Last November,
debating between that and then the
Yeah.
Yes,
Hexagon,
the paranormal
I need to
equipment
learn
is
how
a
to
taker
try
on stuff.
locate.
Oh.
And Dylan's on it, and he tears that stuff to shreds.
Yeah.
I love watching him
That's
talk
good. I'm
about
right
it.
there with him.
I
Yeah.
know.
Today.
I know, I would
Well,
love
you
to,
like
I
it,
wanted
you
to
know.
be on that one too, but again,
Business
You
talk
got
about that
shafted
a lot.
there.
had a terrible panel
Like
schedule,
this
absolutely
whole
awful.
thing with like the camera that senses people that aren't there. I'm like, but it's made to pick out human figures out of patterns. It's what they're
The SLS,
Yeah.
yeah, SLS.
anything it remotely sees that looks like a one's going to interpolate it to be a person. It's only as smart as its software.
Uh-huh.
Check outside.
They were made for video game systems to track, in your video game with the Kinect cameras.
Yep.
But one person sometime in their house, it was something that wasn't there, so never
Upstairs in.
It's because Paranormal Activity 3 uses it.
Yes.
Oh, I
And well,
wanna
and
watch the
Ghost
first one.
Hunters.
And Ghost Hunters.
Zach
yeah.
Baggins kind
Don't
of
even
made
start
that.
with me with Big Ghost.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. That was a great panel.
I learned some new stuff today.
Well, and I meant to bring them this weekend. I forgot. I've actually made a
maps.
I know. I've actually made a cryptid map of the cryptids of North and South Carolina.
I need to get you to make me a little Bigfoot puppet.
I will totally do that.
I think we have one on the website.
Bigfoot puppet, like an Alabama t-shirt, then it could be my little.
It may be there. I don't remember.
Can I buy one of those off you?
Yes.
Or do I have to go to your table?
No, we don't have to.
Oh, okay.
Even better. Card reader, hopefully. I don't have any toys on me. I've been-
We don't have them up.
I can do PayPal, I can do, Apple Pay.
Well, I gotta go finish checking out.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
no, I
I'll
just
get
got
to my
locked out of my
I'm
panel.
staying over tonight.
Are you
I'll sit down with
Duolingo
that
tried
little-
to
Yeah.
do it in the
Good.
middle
So I'll
of the
definitely catch up with you before.
Okay, I'll be here.
I'll buy it online then, don't you worry.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We
My
got
plan was to get it.
Very nice. Thank you.
So yeah, Jason,
Thank
I'll get you to talk with you before the end of the day.
Yeah.
I gotta branch out because every time I read the ones about Maryland, they're terrible. They're
So,
But when you're from somewhere and you read what other people like have written, like, this is wrong, this is an urban legend, and that's not even like, it's a thing.
I know, luckily.
Well, you know, sometimes they have to,
And they all tell the same story. That's not even a thing.
I mean, and Maryland only has so much to do.
Well, I mean, you got the Eastern Shore, and there we had, it was a slave state, so Southern Maryland, Eastern Shore did have some plantations and that going on. Up where I live, not so much, but there's a few. Because if you actually believe it's true.
Well, and there should be a lot of, good stories around Baltimore.
Oh, yeah, depending, so Fells Point is the oldest part of Baltimore. There's quite a few different stories. There's several haunted taverns up there, including Breakfast Bustle, which I did an investigation in. I can show you that one's haunted. Edgar Allan Poe is buried up there, so there's some legends about his grave where he is buried, that is haunted. There.
Yep.
I just keep coming back.
stuff like this. I was like, oh, what about that?
Yeah, we saw those. They're so cute.
Hi, cutie. What's your name? Russell. I adopted a blue one yesterday,
Oh, okay.
and I adopted a purple one today. She didn't really mention it. I like taking pictures of all that, and yesterday be like, oh, I need you one souvenir. You're $100. Let's go. Of course, like I have no like craft talent like that, so I'm like actually like a maybe. Yeah, I figured even though we're still plenty of time before the event, I would go ahead and just like chill. Have you been at the con all weekend, or you just?
This is my first time coming here. Because we used to live in Falls Church, Virginia. And the ones that always go out there are the huge ones that to get in, you have to pay hundreds of dollars to get in. And you're like, yeah.
Now to see one is more approachable price range, is probably
Yeah.
nice.
My dream is to go to the big one over there in California. That's where all those cars are and stuff like that. I'll pay a couple $100 to go to that one. Because at least I can see, if I see William Shatner, I'll buy a happy woman.
What you can do is look up con you want to go to, what businesses are going to be in the con, and then you can see if those businesses need volunteer assistance. So usually when you open out, you set up a account, you get, that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, kind of like because I like to go to, when I lived in Virginia, I used to go to the scrapbook show up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's like an hour and a half from where we used to live. And when you go to buy the tickets, there's, oh, you want to volunteer, you can volunteer. If you volunteer this much hours, you get this. If you volunteer this much hours, you get this, and stuff like that. And most of the times, it's even to help the vendors to watch their spots and stuff like that. Thank you for letting me know. I'll look that up.
Yeah, taking on volunteer hours at a con is a great way to get to be involved in that. Plus then usually you get access to the vendor halls and outlet.
Yeah.
So you can go in and it's not stuff.
If you just walk, most of them, there's a lot there that are still closed, most likely they're like in panels and stuff. But I want to buy half of the stuff I see.
Well, if you stop by the All Stories Book and Print Gallery, that's the group I work with. Pick up one of our business cards. If there's something you're interested in and you don't have money for it at the time, you can actually contact us and
To ship it
we'll
out.
let you know and we'll like ship it out.
Yeah, because I saw like this, the little table right there. I saw some books and I'm like, yeah, how much are 120? Well, it's a series.
You're trying to look at the whole
And
series.
then like a big book is all the series and I'm like 120. Yeah. Because I just got laid off, so.
Yeah, like if you see anything at the Tall Stories,
And Falstaff blind dates thing.
Yeah, that sounded
Facebook,
interesting.
phone call. And we still have it.
Murder cold cases, high fantasy.
Yeah,
Futuristic, but they don't know how you're futuristic and high fantasy, but we're gonna find out.
right.
Open it now.
Mystery.
Grab some of these snacks I brought and have them drive home snacks.
Are you leaving today or are you?
Oh, today, yeah. Work tomorrow, so.
I got like 110 hours of leave, well, 80 now that I had to spend like a week at Christmas hospital. But I got 80 hours of leave back up, so I can pretty much do whatever the hell I want.
Nice.
Yeah, lipstick. second in a series.
Oh,
That's
that
just-
sucks.
Well, I'll read it, and hopefully it'll be a standalone, even though it's like the second in a series.
Right.
And if not, then I like it. Some people can do that. Some people will try to follow it, and it's not like book two of a thing. So hopefully it'll. I get to go find the one trash can in this store. I like this hotel. Everything's pretty compact, but oh my god, trash can.
There's like one there like an elevator, and there's a bigger one that's like over by the door.
Yeah, like there's like two. Like they should be everywhere. You should trip over them,
Right? Actually, last year when I worked for Conway, I struggled with figuring out where the trash cans were.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, without getting coffee, there is a Starbucks on the lot of it.
Yeah, we saw that when we came in. Thank you.
I went for getting some coffee cake himself. He's like, oh, I'm a snack this morning.
So you guys are interested in ghost hunting tech?
It looked interesting. Honestly, I'm interested in basically all of the paranormal channels that are today, so I really care a lot.
This is the last one I'm on today, but I'll be in the room for the other couple of them. I'm sure. Do we have any planes? Planes.
I can't say that I actually know a ton about anything resembling this hunting, much less the tech involved in it. But one of my friend's moms was involved in the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society back when we were in college. I was like, well, that always seemed interesting, and I've got time today.
You know, it's one of those things where if you ask probably everybody on the panel, I think we're probably firmly either in the camp of half this shit doesn't work or, you know, experiment and see what happens. I can tell you that a lot of the stuff that you see on TV, if you watch the reality shows, either it's one of those like, well, it worked one time, so we assume it's always going to work for me, or it just doesn't work. But I'm OG about all the stuff. I've been doing it forever, so we have a lot of stuff when I started. It was basically like a tape recorder and camera. And I thought we were hot shit because we had one of those night shot, Sony night shot video cameras.
Yeah, I thought it was cool when we got like heat seats and cameras like that. That was impressive enough for me. I thought all this other weird stuff technology can do with it. That's a lot.
Yeah, I wish the TV shows would go a little more into like how stuff works and like why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes they do. I don't like to watch a whole lot of it, but my husband and I started working with people that did historical sites and battlefields. When you're in an old historic home and you got your little like EMF detector and you're like up by the wall, well, there's wiring in the wall. It's going to pick up the wiring in the wall. And it's not like older homes, especially if they're like the wattle and dog housing or something, like they're not going to run it deep in the wall like they might do it here. So it's close to the surface, you might pick it up. We were in a castle in Ireland that they had run wiring in, and they had just sort of like put it in the corners and cemented over it a little bit, hide it. So yeah, it's interesting. I like some of the tech, but some of the stuff I just look at shit. So I'm not saying don't use it, but definitely RT.
Well, but like a grain of salt or two, you know.
Yeah, but you have to know how it works. Like, I think first knowing how stuff works and what it's maybe originally meant to do, I think is the first thing you gotta learn. I yell at people when they don't read the manual. Like, just because you saw someone on TV do it that way, doesn't mean they work that way.
It should be that way.
No, like my education that was this, like the temperature guns people always use. Those measure surface temperature. They were designed for the heating and air conditioning. They just make to like measure boilers. They don't measure air temperature. If I pointed at the wall, it's going to measure the wall. If I pointed at you, it's going to measure you. So all these TV shows that started out using those for air temperature, like it's not an air temperature monitor. I know that because I was gonna buy one. I'm like, wait, it says it's for You can get some that will measure air temperature, but it's not gonna be one of those. So if you point it at the wall and it's cold out, yeah, the wall's gonna be 50 degrees. That's not a cold spot, that's a cold wall. I learned that. I learned that thermal cameras can pick up your thermal reflection off the wall if you're too close to the wall. Not even just like the person that you put your hand and walk away and then somebody can see that, but literally can pick up your heat reflection off the surface. Especially
That's not
windows.
something I knew. So that's
You know, you learn. I've got a whole collection of pictures that people have taken that have weird lens flare in it, like from the sun and stuff. Where you like it'll come out green even when the sun's under here. It's like a little green spot. It's lens flare.
I think the weirdest like photo type mishap we've ever managed to do is one that eventually we figured out how the aliens happened to create the illusion. They created the illusion of like a candle you have in a plate being basically like reflected over a carpet as a separate candle. And it looked really cool. I'm like, yeah.
Oh yeah, my favorite weird camera illusion. I may or may not tell this later at the panel, but we've gone out to a historic property with a group, and we took some pictures in a dark room. We got this weird like almost looked like a ribbon of light, like just hovering in the air. So then we took another picture, and it was the same shape, the same place. And now I'm getting suspicious. I'm like, because it hasn't moved at all, right? So we took a few more pictures, like it hasn't moved, same shape, same place, same look. So I'm like, all right. Next time we take a picture, I'm not going to shut my eyes, because when it's dark, a lot of times people will shut their eyes so the flash doesn't blind you. I'm not going to shut my eyes. I'm going to look and see if it's reflecting off something. And then I actually saw this thing reflect off something in the room. I didn't know what it was. So we turned the lights on. There's like a chrome popcorn machine in the corner of this room randomly because it's like it's like a county office, so they had it there. And it was a weird reflection off of the chrome popcorn machine, making this thing in the air in the dark that looked like you couldn't really. I think you could see something was there, but you couldn't tell what it was. Yeah. So
That's really cool.
like you have to walk the process down. But yeah, for all there's a good. Well, the place is haunted, but it's not haunted by a weird energy vortex in a corner. Yeah, it's totally haunted, but that was
I mean, sometimes even like seeing like a false positive or like a weird illusion can still be a really interesting experience.
yeah, like I said, I collect stuff that's friends will post stuff sometimes it'll have like a weird reflection in it or a weird sunflower. I'll be like, I'm gonna put this in my file of weird shit you can get in your pictures. People think cell phone cameras are infallible and they're not. You can still sometimes get double exposed because you can get weird reflections in the lens, you can do all that stuff.
Especially the cell phone cameras try to like autocorrect for lighting. And that all sorts of weird
Especially
stuff.
in like night shot. They're better now, they have better low light now because they've been designed to have better low light, but back in the day, the whole orb phenomenon really you don't see it before like the mid-90s, because that's when people started getting digital cameras. And the way the old digital cameras work, the way any digital camera works, is it interprets what you're seeing into the binary. It goes to a CCD chip to interpret what you're seeing. It's not like a film process. And the older chips were, if it got into a low light situation, it would just interpolate something to fill in those pixels. And sometimes it would be solid orbs, sometimes they have a little spiral in them. I have a couple of those. And the majority of orb stuff, especially that early stuff, is just the way the cameras work in low light, they weren't made to do. And as cameras have gotten better, and especially as they started to be designed for lower light, because people like to take pictures at campfires and at wedding receptions and dances where there's clubs and where there's low light, you're not seeing orbs so much anymore. People aren't talking about orbs. You're not getting them. I haven't gotten an orb in a picture in, at least my earliest Android days. This is a Galaxy, so that was probably going to be 15 years. I have not really seen one in any of my pictures. And I only ever got
the
one
last
on
time
film.
I actually heard someone mention them.
Yeah, they're not really in vogue anymore. I only ever got one on film, and I'm pretty sure either a bug or on the water shop. Yeah.
I thought it was 2014 the last time I actually heard anyone mention
Yeah,
them.
no one's talking about orbs, and it's all REM pods and clear cameras and expensive shit that people can't really afford anyway. I've looked into it, they're expensive. panel will be everything my little scientific heart hopes it will be.
For what?
Just ripping apart ghost tech.
Oh, trust it will be. So there's 5 of us on this panel?
I think so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I guess everybody wanted to yell about
That's
it.
good, because I don't have many like questions. So, have you had any panels with Dylan?
Yes.
Dylan is phenomenal. Dylan changed my whole entire aspect on tech last year. So he's a great person.
Yeah, I've never been like the only tech person in a group. I guess if we actually get the one we're trying to get off the ground, I would be the primary tech person because I'm just an engineer. But I'm only a semi-skeptic. But yeah, like I said, we're like OGs. So back in the day, we literally just rolled out with like a digital recorder and a camera and a notebook.
Yeah.
And I still think that's kind of the best way to do things.
That's kind of going to be our thought process in this is you don't need the fancy tech. You pen, paper, and a recorder.
Thermometers are not bad ideas. Video cameras are definitely not bad ideas. And some of the stuff that people trot out, and oh my god, the flashlight thing. Oh my god.
I think that's one of my questions in here.
Oh my god. We were trying to run with a group for a while in Maryland. I will not name who they are because they are still active and I don't want to talk smack, but they're very enamored of the flashlight thing. You know what the flashlight thing is? So you get like one of the pocket flashlights. Usually they use the small ones.
It's a special kind, though.
Oh, of course it's a special kind now.
Yeah, probably. But it has to be the ones that like
Yeah, it's definitely the
twist.
kind that you can take the top off to put the batteries in. So you can what you do is you turn it and open it until it's just not connecting. Right, so you turn it on and then unscrew it until it just goes off, like by a millimeter. And then you put it down, and then basically you stand there for 20 minutes and go, okay, if there's any ghosts here, please turn the flashlight on. Come on, I know you can turn the flashlight on. Please turn the and then somebody will jiggle the table or breathe on it, it'll connect, the flashlight will turn on. And then we're gonna spend another 20 minutes going, okay, now turn it off. Come on and turn it off. Yeah.
So if no one jiggles the table and it comes on, what's your thought on that?
I mean, the table's connected to the floor.
I'll say like
Right.
floorboards.
I mean, it depends.
It's on
okay,
concrete.
So if you had literally had it in a Faraday cage across the room with concrete and it went on and off, I might believe it's something's trying to do it. But people aren't doing this kind of control. They sit on like a creaky ass table, everybody's milling around, and the floors are creaky, and it might just shift a little bit on its own.
So the reason I asked that is because there's a place that Alex and I go to quite frequently, the Trevette Clinic, and they constantly use flashlights. And we strategically place them all around. Each spirit has a certain location. And we sit in the center of the floor on a concrete floor and don't move. And they turn on and off. My thing is, it's possible. Especially when you get response to it, like an answer.
It's the methodology I think that bothers me more than like, okay, so they can turn lights on and off, great, but you gotta like isolate that shit. I use dowsing rods in EVP sessions. I don't pretend they're anything more than alcohol at work, but
Yeah.
they seem to indicate that's not pretty well for me.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because like our table is down.
People in the UK.
This book, have you read this book?
I just bought it on my Kindle the other night.
This book is
I
phenomenal.
haven't really started yet. I was looking at it once before and I didn't pick it up, and now I have it.
Every hour.
Yeah, there's water companies in the UK that still employ people to use the dowsing rods.
You'll find one.
And
I
they do.
used them once. It was a historic.
Oh.
It's a mall now, but it used to be a hospital up my way, and I was up on like the second floor balcony just playing with them. And I was walking, and they would cross, and I would walk, and they would not cross. So I set my husband downstairs to see what I was
I
walking
can
over.
slide in.
One was the ladies' room, and one was there were lights on the underside of the balcony. Every time I crossed, it was like.
Maybe it's stuff.
And the thing is, even though like Professor Chris French in the UK has done a number of tests with dowsing rods, that the results are not significant. People still keep finding, and it's
And they don't, nobody really knows exactly how they work, but they
No.
work.
Because I know it's got lead.
I've been using. I like those better than some pendulums
Yeah.
because it's really easy.
Yeah, and then she was
At least for me to make a pendulum and tell me what I want to
Yeah,
hear.
people are driving.
I mean, is it the rod or is it the person that's just That's the
That, you know,
problem, we
she's
can't
driven,
prove.
and then she started
My
saying
theory with the
how
dowsing rod is it just helps.
Andrea.
We all have an energy field. If you put a natural
That
pressure
she,
meter in
you
your
know, she
chest,
knows
you
something
run
about
about
sales.
DC current.
And see, I don't understand how these
So I
things are.
somehow
So,
think that
you
these
know, I've
rods
never
just interact with
one.
if your
This
field
is, you know,
interacts
the
with
first
Earth's
few
field,
one I've been
picking
to.
up those places.
Yeah.
She said that
Pendulums, I can sit
last
here
year,
and say,
you
okay,
know,
show me
Andrea
no.
was the
Whatever I
guest
want.
of honor. She was giving $2
Because I know I have that bias.
per diem
So
for
I don't
food,
typically use it.
travel,
My husband will. I don't trust myself to
so
not
per
make it
diem
tell me what I want to
food,
do.
2 hotel rooms, travel, and $1,000 in addition to that. And she didn't stay the whole time. She came late Friday night. She stayed Saturday. She
I've
left
heard
first thing
it's
Sunday
satellite.
morning.
because she.
So right now I'm the power and thermal engineer for a couple of very old science missions up in NASA Goddard.
This is Steve's been quoted by NASA because of his work on infrastructure.
I think it's really fascinating. Going through something, when I read that
Oh.
guy's paper where it was like he got his lab was haunted and turned out to be a baseball.
Yeah, it's Vic Tandy's in Coventry. He's updated Vic's work because I think there were some discrepancies found
Yeah,
with
well, I didn't think
on the 19 hertz. I think
No, you're
originally,
getting
I think
paid
Steve
to
sort
do a
of
job. Literally, you are
focused in a bit more on that. And there's been a couple of things corrected within it, but that's, I'm not a physicist.
She's like, supposed to be one.
I'll leave that to him. Fascinating.
But still, most of the stories that you.
Yeah, be like, you're not volunteering.
If someone sees it,
I'm literally,
I
I mean, being paid to
the
do
person
this. And
interacting with I can't tell you
just
just
on
on
Sunday.
Sunday. Try to
Because
figure out
it's the
what
only day
you,
they can get off.
what it was. We went to
Yeah.
a house investigation where they straight out told us there was black adults involved between them and the neighbors. So you don't think that might be causing your weird dreams?
Yeah.
No, it must be a ghost. They never called us back.
No.
Follow up, I can't imagine why.
Some people don't like to hear the truth.
I
They
think maybe
just,
you should get the both cleaned up in one second.
right.
You know, I had a weird experience after one of my conventions on Sunday morning. I woke up and the ceiling was moving, and that wasn't because there was a ghost, it was because I ate too much.
All right, guys, we're gonna give people a few more minutes just because the elevators are jam-packed and, oh shit.
It's been an alarm going off of one of them since yesterday.
Oh, God. Yeah, it took, I had to catch like 5 different ones to even try to get off the 5th floor because I'm trying to haul everything down and,
It would help if the up escalator.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. They reckon that's not going to be fixed till about next week.
Well, we'll be gone by then.
Might be ready for next year.
I don't know, they fixed the wheelchair accessible boardwalk, yeah, and that was last year.
Hotels claim they don't have any money, they all.
I mean, they were,
Like accessibility problems. Like you legally have to fix it.
Yes.
One of my condos, I think it's all the time, Baltimore, their handicap lift in one area hadn't ever worked. They finally go condemn that part of the building, and those things.
That's what's
Like,
interesting.
you have to fix it.
Oh, yeah, they still use the two. But in the UK, they don't.
They probably officially use the term disabled, but I'm 45, so sometimes handicap.
No, I don't. This is one of those little curiosities.
Because
I
Yeah.
have a badge,
Yeah.
but it doesn't carry to the US.
Yes.
Florida, whatever. You
Yeah,
thought
I
there'd
have one
be
for
a reciprocal arrangement, but if you've got one here, you get it in the UK.
Oh my goodness, they are so locally
Yeah.
given to you, it's like a local, like a state thing,
Yeah.
like, yeah. And then it depends, like, one of my friends had one for her partner, and like, this came and got to the placard, like,
Listen, if you're
he's
on a
asking
team
has to
or
wear
you're gonna
and
work in
shit, and then I have a neighbor who had a
They're
designated
still gonna
handicap
spend
space,
money.
who had his car, and then
Yeah, people
he had to
paying
like
on that
years.
probably says it's your most favorite piece of evidence.
Yeah, it sounds like somebody was banging in the kitchen back there or something.
That's the side door where the bar is.
Did somebody like did somebody open a door? Is open the door banging?
Oh, this is who we think it is. Then yeah, they're the ones with the wonderful responses from the Ren pod.
Which, I mean, you can argue and debate, like,
I
okay.
know how
But
those.
if you're
I'm a
not-
little bit intrigued by it. I saw something on Expedition Expert sounded like Morse code. That was intriguing. But for the most part, like, I don't think
The Ren pod, I know that walkie-talkies at a range of 40 feet can set them off.
that was my concern when we were watching TV show. I'm like, okay, well, I don't think they're making shit up at the same time. What's the range of these? Like, how far away do you have to be? And what, like, it's a sphere of this thing. So what about sitting downstairs? Like, how high is the ceiling? How much is the space between it? Like, yeah, like there totally could be somebody downstairs setting it off unintentionally that you don't even know that they were downstairs filming something else and they set it up.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
why I
You don't have any
just
bucks, you don't have any merchandise.
just focus on stuff that's like temperature.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do. I don't even have a temperature sensor. The temperature gun don't work,
But no.
we have an audio recorder and cameras, and we need to upgrade over to your camera. That's for work, but that's it too. I don't think you can even get Super 8 tapes anymore. I need a digital one.
Absolutely.
We really just got a digital recorder that you could like USB plug in. Our old one, you had to like have a mail thing, put it in the computer and download these files.
All right.
Oh, yeah, because you're so well established.
Still more people than learn the Friday.
Our Friday panel there was like 3 people in here.
I think we just almost, had more people on this for the research panel than we're actually at the panel.
That's what we had.
That's okay. I guess sometimes what you're into isn't what people are into. Taking to the paranormal panel.
I mean, it does take for some time to reply.
The inclusivity and the queer hauntings was pretty full.
But now I have to wonder, like, was it happening because people are really interested in the topic, or was it
No, it's
happening
like,
because the panel?
This is too.
Maybe both.
Maybe both, because she wasn't in the, or I'm sorry, they were in the queer hauntings.
We've all been there.
So. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Jenna, can you close the door for me, please? Thank you, darling.
Yeah, it's 10:37.
Yeah, at this point.
This Rosedale.
Yeah, and I thought it was 12, and that's why I was like panicking. Okay, everyone, thank you for coming. Today we're going to talk about ghost tech, some maybe do's and don'ts, some pros and cons, different things like that. We're going to start with introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Jason Roach. I'm a member of the Association of Paranormal Study, also the author of The House on Dead Man's Curve. And I've been investigating for about 4 or 5 years, and I run the tech for our team.
Hi, I'm Dylan Jones. I'm a parapsychologist at Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen in Scotland. I'm doing my PhD there, and my doctoral research is looking at the media representation of paranormal phenomena and research, and whether or not it affects the behavior and the professional practices of modern ghost hunting groups. So I've been investigating since I was 9 years old. Started young, and that was largely because Ghostbusters influenced me.
I do love that movie. We have spent many a night on investigations crafting Ghostbusters jokes. My name is Karen Carruthers. I am in teenage groups right now, but my husband and I are trying to get one launched up. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, born and raised. My wending down here is a long, strange trip. As far as paranormal investigating and my tech credentials, by day I'm a rocket scientist at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. So I tend to run a lot of the tech stuff for groups because my husband is an IT guy, but he's one of our sensitives, so he leaves all that stuff to me. I have been investigating for a little over 20 years, but I have a lifelong interest in paranormal. So I'm an OG, I've got some thread.
Hi, I'm Tina McSwain. I'm the founder and director of the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society. I have been investigating and researching for over 30 years now.
Good morning. My name is Megan. I have been investigating for over 20 years myself. I'm a member of CAPS, Charlotte Area Paranormal Society, with our leader, Tina. And I'm excited to talk about some technical stuff today.
Yay. So we're going to start with some fun stuff and then we're going to rip everything apart. So what would you say is your favorite piece of tech to use? Why? And what is the best evidence you've caught on it?
Well, can I have that one?
You all can have it. So, but we can start you. We can start with you,
I want to go
Tina.
first before she steals it.
Go for it. Go for it.
We use a FLIR thermal imaging camera. Now, a FLIR thermal imaging camera is used in industry as for heating and air applications. Let's say you needed an energy audit at your home. Someone would come in with a FLIR gun and they would go to your attic and they could see the temperature differentials where you're leaking, cool air or where hot air is coming in. That's one application. Another application is in a huge industrial plant where you've got like a paper mill and these machines run constantly, running paper. You can take this FLIR, go to this machine and point the gun at it and it will show you the temperatures of the working mechanisms inside the machine so you can technically see if you're going to have a breakdown at some point. What it does is it takes basically pictures and they're gradiated in colors and the colors correspond to a temperature, okay? So it's pretty foolproof. I mean, you can definitely see what is human shaped, like you, ma'am. Like if I pointed it at you, I could see that you would show up, somewhere in the range of 90 something degrees, which is our body temperatures, but that chair beside you would be about as cold as this room is. And I could see the difference in the picture. We used that FLIR at historic Rosedale, which is an older home here in Charlotte, built in 1815. And we were out there one night about 1 o'clock in the morning at the back of the house. There was no one in the house. The alarm was on. There was 5 of us out there. We were leaving after doing an investigation, and just like that, last little things, that you do on this as an afterthought, we're just standing there pointing the FLIR up at the windows, and all of a sudden we see something. And we start taking pictures, and we believe what we've got is the spirit of one of the Davidson sisters looking out the window, because there's 3 windows on the back of that house. There was nothing in there, but yet you see FLIR images coming up in each of the windows and moving around and crouching back and forth from the window. So that to me is about my favorite piece of evidence I've ever collected.
I wasn't going to take that one, although that one is spectacular.
Do we need to separate y'all?
I will start off with saying that my favorite piece of equipment is yourself. You know what you feel, you know what you experience, but since this is not what this channel's about.
Actually, it is. Yourself can be a piece of equipment.
Yes, that would be my number one. So my second one would be a millimeter. I love that it was made out of a tragic incident of a father losing his daughter. And he wanted to, tweak some equipment and make something so he can communicate with her. So it's a newer piece of equipment, within the past 25 years, but it's really, really basic. There's not a lot of bells and whistles to it. There are elevated versions of it that make noises and, light up and do all kinds of things. However, the most basic one is going to read energy in only 3 different ways. I like to have it set at milligauss. I think that's the easiest for my non-technical brain to read it. It also is a temp gun at the same time. You can't point and shoot, however, it will capture those readings at the same time. I think the highest I have ever seen it go to was actually in South Carolina. Just recently in March when we went to Haygood Mill, there was a conference there, and in one of the back cabins in the woods, it spiked to a 13.7 milligauss. Usually it does not move at all. That's how I know I like it. It usually stays at 0.0. So it's kind of like if it does get something on it, there's something on it. And it doesn't happen all the time.
My favorite piece of investigative tech is probably just your digital recorder. But my favorite piece of evidence that we ever caught was not with one of those. It was, since my husband's not here, I'll tell his story. We went out to Gettysburg Battlefield with a group, and there was a medium there, and that particular group had a natural tri-field meter, which I think had fallen out of common usage, but it measures the Earth's magnetic field. It measures DC current. If you point it at you, you're running about 3 volts of DC because I did it. And they're pretty sensitive. If you jiggle the handle, it'll spike. So we're out in the field, and the medium has made contact with one of the soldiers there, and she's talking to him. And I'd never met her before, so I was still testing out, like, is she, legit or not? So as she's talking to the spirit and getting a sense of who he is, my husband's got this meter, and he's pointing it at where she says the ghost is, and it starts to creep up. 3, 4, 5. She keeps talking. 6. So she finally gets to a point where she's going to cross the guy over, and the meter's up to like 22, which is insane. Like the Earth's magnetic field isn't 22. You might get 1 volt if you get on a lane line. So she's talking to the guy and she finds that, okay, he's gone. He's gone into the light. He's gone. And it dropped right back down to 0. Cool. And he was just standing there holding it very still because we knew it had a jiggle. And I've never seen evidence like that. That particular group that we would go out to has gotten some stunning. They got a video of full body apparition, a picture of a full body apparition. I know they aren't making it up. Like, I don't know what about them got this evidence, but that was like the first time I think we went out with them in like 2003. Oh, it was awesome.
You guys go to Gettysburg a lot, don't you?
We go to Gettysburg a lot. We're up in Maryland, and my husband's a Civil War enthusiast and a paranormal investigator, so we go to Gettysburg a lot. So I'll probably tell a lot of Gettysburg stories. Although we've been to Antietam quite a few times and had some experiences there, although nothing I've gotten on equipment, I don't think. And then we were at Mary's Heights in Manassas, or in Fredericksburg. We've been out to Manassas, so we've done some Virginia stuff too.
Cool. Dylan? Have
fun. My caveat is that we don't know what a ghost is, so we can't possibly measure it. We have ghosts of people, we have ghosts of animals, we have ghosts of vehicles. So inherently, we have different kinds of ghosts. So we don't know what they are, so therefore we can't measure them. What we can measure are environmental factors which might be having an influence on the human experience. So in order to have a human experience a ghost or a haunting, you have to have people there to experience it. So what I would do is have one of these, mobile phone. It's great for recording notes. So when I'm observing the ghost hunters, and I'm sat there in the dark, because invariably they ghost hunt in the dark, I sit there and I take the notes on my phone. So I'm making a contemporaneous record of the people's experiences at that time. It's also good for videoing and taking photographs and recording audio, because one of the most important things I'm interested in is the experience of the witness. So I can actually do the audio, record the interview on my phone, and I've got it there for reference later on. I've seen plenty of examples of evidence captured on that, but it's purely to document the human experience, and that's primarily what I'm interested in. I haven't caught anything ghostly on it or any other piece of equipment.
Okay. So we'll start up here and work our way back down. If you could remove one piece of equipment from the field, what would it be and why?
K2 meters. The K2 meter I found is the go-to of most ghost hunters. They believe that spirits can communicate through it and increase the lights, or they ask it to hold it onto a particular light. But invariably, the ghost hunters that I've spoken to and asked them to explain what the K2 meter and how it works, invariably don't know. They don't know that it only measures amplitude, it doesn't measure frequency. So it tells you that there's a signal there, that the amplitude is registering up and down, but it doesn't tell you the frequency. And the frequency is the fingerprint. It tells you what is causing that meter to go on and off. And when you ask, and invariably I have asked ghost hunters whether they've read any basic physics books, the response I've often get is, I don't understand physics. So the analogy I would use is if you go to a hospital and see a doctor, you would expect a doctor to know if they use a piece of equipment that they're fully trained in it, they understand the theory behind it, and they know how to interpret the data that they're getting from it. There are countless things that can cause a K2 meter to go off. It can't be calibrated. So if you drop it or knock it, it's basically politely useless. It's going to give you erroneous readings. Ghost hunters invariably wear like fleecy jackets with their logos on it. The K2 meter can pick up EMF off that. We give off EMF. EMF can be conducted by radio transmitters hundreds of miles away. The invariable excuse is, well, we switched off the electric in the house. That does not matter. Water pipes, the house itself, what it's made of, can still conduct the EMF that's been generated by the radio transmitter. It can be conducted by trees. Invariably, ghost hunters do not understand the physics behind it, yet they still continue to use it. So I would say, bin it.
Karen?
Wow, I learned some stuff about K2s I didn't know, and I don't even use them anymore. I would like to get rid of those ghost box things that, well, both of the kinds of them, either the ones that cycle through all the white noise radio static, or the ones that you can get on your phone, like that will spit words at you. The white noise static, I feel like you're seeding your evidence. And I've even done some double blind studies with people who like put you on noise canceling headphones and the questioner's in another room or something. And I don't even think that's still the ghost box. I think that's some kind of psychic connection with people, but it cycles through radio frequencies. And you hear bits and pieces of speaking and noise, and how are you not going to connect in your mind the paranoia of, oh, I think I'm talking to a ghost, so I suddenly hear help me. The apps on your phone, it's a database of words, and it's just shooting random shit out. And I think a lot of times, I've had watched friends play with this, and they'll grab onto whatever thread seems reasonable for their conversation. Oh, finally it's telling me something I want to hear, and they'll go off on a track, and no one really takes the time to do the study of, is it really, you only remember your positive hits. If you don't keep records, you only remember your positive hits or your spectacular failures, not the times when it just kind of didn't work. So I think people see the evidence, and then you hear what you want to hear, and especially when someone has an EVP, a voice recording, and they say, oh, listen to this, I think it says help me. Oh, please don't tell me that. I'm well trained enough that I'll try to avoid hearing help me, but if as soon as you tell somebody what they're supposed to hear, they'll hear it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these things, it's like, I think people are hearing what they want to hear as opposed to getting genuine communication. I have some recordings off a digital recorder that I think are genuine because they literally come out of nowhere. They don't use this thing. And it's gotten very popular because it's easier for people to get evidence. Well, it's easier because you're hearing what you want to hear. I think we need to get rid of them.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
If you could remove one piece of equipment from the playing field, what would it be and why?
Okay, thank you. I would go with these phone apps, like the Ghost Finder or the EVP box or the Ghost Box on the phone, but all phone apps because it's an app.
Yeah.
It's not like my FLIR. The FLIR that we use that got these wonderful pictures, was in the neighborhood of $4,500. It is a calibrated instrument. You can send it to be calibrated. They send it back, which we do. We get calibrated every year on a maintenance schedule. We know what it does, how to use it, what its flaws could be. But in an app, you don't have any of that. You could just, oh well, okay. Here's a thermal imaging app on the phone. It's not the same thing, and it's not evidence worthy in my opinion.
No, and if you want, if you need a thermal on a budget, they have an actual camera that you can buy and plug into your phone that will work almost the same as.
And it's actually made by FLIR.
It's made by FLIR that makes the big $7,000 to $3,000 ones that you can buy. And I have one of those, and we use it sometimes on our investigations, and they work pretty well.
Mm-hmm. And those are more affordable, like in the about $300 range.
Yeah, I think I paid like $250 for mine, something like that. So they're going to give you a better response than an app that just says, "Hey, let's show you some ghosts."
Yes.
You don't know how the apps are coded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been trying to find open source code for these ghost box apps with just spit words at you. I don't know how it works. If they don't know how it works, I can't trust it. You don't know how it works.
Then does it really work?
I think one of the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of you, but because they're talking about apps, I think one of the only interesting, and I'm not going to say definitive, but interesting experiences that I had with one, our team uses a program called the Phasma Box. And it's the same as all the others. It's just a generic word bank that probably feeds off what you're talking about in the room. But it's only supposed to use words. We were in the battleship North Carolina, and we were talking about the torpedo and the accident. And instead of words, we got sirens. And it was like distinct ship siren of an emergency. And that kind of caught me because you're not supposed to hear like sounds out of this. You're supposed to hear words. But like you said, we don't know how these programs are really designed. So is there a way that it could have picked up? We're talking about some kind of emergency situation, and it was like, hey, let's Google real quick and find some sirens.
I can say that I think some of the tests that have been done is that some of them can actually geolocate where you are,
Mm-hmm.
and it will reference and cross-reference that with things that are in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So it will come up with things like words that are specific to that particular area and what people have put on like Google reviews and that kind of thing. So unless we know the code that
Right.
it's been written with, that's very possible.
Oh, and that makes perfect sense. That's like I'm not
Mm.
saying it's definitive. It was just an interesting situation. So go ahead.
Actually, this weekend, I learned of, I do not know the name yet. I don't even want to look it up, but it's a box and it's supposed to say whether an entity or spirit is good or evil. But if I know, and I mean, I just heard this. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, this is just the worst. It's a box. It's got a red light and it's got a blue light. So as you are, asking questions or trying to communicate or anything like this, if it picks up on a spirit, it's going to sound off that red light if it's evil, and it's going to light up that blue light if it is not evil. And I just learned, and I'm
It's gonna be the next thing on those adventures.
and I'm
Yeah,
just like,
you got it.
no.
We're not gonna mention their name, but they
Like a fun party game.
Oh, let's just say them.
I'm
Let's
like,
just say it's truth
no,
and
what,
evidence. It's
I
Savannah.
was like, this,
Because I was like, what is this? And I was like, this is dumb.
Sounds like a really fun party game. I've
Yeah.
yeah. Drink, seeing who in the room is evil or not. Oh, Lord.
yeah, I mean, there's just so many reasons, what do you define as good or evil? Is, something you're talking about one specific, I mean, there's just so many questions and I'm just like, no. This,
Yeah, no.
as soon as this came on, because I guess it's something fairly new, it just needs to go.
And that's another thing, yes, I'll give them some credit. There's groups in the country that are, coming up with and then therefore marketing these brand new pieces of equipment. But as to Dylan's point, do they even know, what they're trying to measure? Do they even know what parameters to use to build the darn thing? But all of a sudden, it's the next greatest, good and evil detector. So I mean, that's a problem to me.
So, ghost hunting on a budget. What's the one required piece? I'll start with you and come back up.
Notepad and a pencil. You do not need to have fancy equipment. You have yourself, you can take notes, you can jot down experiences, dates, times, the way you felt. So I think that is the best one and the cheapest.
I would go with this because everybody has one. It will take pictures, it'll take videos, it'll take notes, and everybody has one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Especially like back in the day, I would have said a notebook and a camera and a digital recorder. Well, I have all of that right in my pocket. Yeah, definitely just take notes. If you do nothing else, take notes of everything. It will help you later.
I can only agree with that. These are great, but obviously if you haven't got a battery charger at hand and you're working all night on it, it's going to run out. So the backup is always notebook and pencil or pen. And write everything down.
So, everyday household items. We know of some that we use. Unfortunately, K2 meters, hardware equipment, things like that. But what are some other items that could be used around the house that are budget friendly?
Can I start this?
Mhm.
Yeah, a reel of cotton and a jar of honey. And it goes back to something that Peter Underwood and the likes of Harry Price come up with for the likes of Borley Rectory and up to more modern times. And I actually used it in an investigation in the 90s where a young mum was complaining that in the house that she lived in with her 4-year-old daughter, there were often footsteps heard in the night. Upstairs, when she'd get up to check, her daughter was always fast asleep in bed. Or so she thought. So using the advice, put the piece of cotton across the landing, put the honey across the piece of cotton, and then during the night, because that's when the phenomena was happening, I was waiting up, heard the footsteps, bum, 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 across the landing, bum, 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 go back. I go upstairs, mum comes out the room, daughter appears to be fast asleep in bed, yet the cotton has been broken, it's been put across the doorway, and of course there's honey on the traces of her pajamas, so we know she was the ghost. Cost effective, don't have to go buy batteries and get motion detectors or set up cameras. Sometimes there is an easier way to crack an egg.
That's a good story. Yeah, and definitely if you're thinking about eliminating things, there's cheap and easy ways to do it. I think one of the easier ways for paranormal community, like if you want to do like Boy 3/4, but you don't have a lot of money, is you just get your, you take your, a necklace. You can put, if I can get it off, spend the whole pound getting it off. You take your necklace.
That's good. We need time wasters.
No, I can't. Any other morning I can get there. You can even tie like a washer to a string or a screw or a nut or anything. You just sit here and you let it stop, and then you can ask it yes or no questions, and eventually it will move. It's moving now because I haven't gotten myself still. I'm not going to go through all that. But if you really are curious if something's there and you don't have anything, everybody has some kind of a weight they can tie to a string and sit there. And you can be skeptical about pendulums, but they will still work. Now, whether that's your tiny muscle movements and going through your subconscious, or whether it's a ghost, you can make up your own mind. I definitely have my own opinions about it, but it's a very easy way to do a communication session without having to go out and buy a recorder or grab your phone or get a Ouija board or find a medium. Like, anybody can do that.
I took that a little bit further and designed a 3D printed stand to put the pendulum on. So I took the human element out
Oh,
of
I'm
it.
gonna have to pick your brain about that because
Yes.
my arm gets tired after a while, and I can kind of make it do what I want to, so I don't use them that often.
So
but-
therefore, it's over
Yeah.
here and you're back here and it's doing its thing on a flat surface, whether
Let's
it's,
pick your brain about that.
and I would say, temperature guns, back because of the pandemic, a lot of people have the guns, just the thermometer guns. They're affordable, $20 at Walmart now. So that is one way to, test things. But you've got to know the parameters. Some of them only have a range of 6 feet. The more expensive ones, which wouldn't be $20 at Walmart, have a range of 20 feet. And then there's another one that's 35 feet. So you have to know what it's looking for. But a temperature gun, you're looking for cold spots or hot spots. Cold meaning that, we believe spirits are energy. So if they're trying to manifest, they might want to take thermal energy out of the air, therefore create a cold spot. And we don't get excited unless we're seeing like a 12 to 15 degree drop, because in any given room in this hotel, you're going to have a 3 to 5 degree difference, just the way heating in there works. I know because that's what I do. And matter of fact, North Carolina code says that you have to have no more than, 3 to 5% differential between the rooms in a house, to pass an inspection. That's what you have to do. So we don't get excited on these temperature guns until there's a significant drop in temperature, or could be a rise in temperature, denoting the same thing. If it's 40 degrees outside and all of a sudden you come across an area that's 70, well, then there's something going on in that area. And you need to concentrate your investigative efforts in that space.
I'm gonna give you 3 real fast. So the first one I recommend is a flashlight, not to do any kind of communicating with. So when you don't bust your butt, when you're walking around in places that the lights might be turned off, and actually see where you're going, because I think that's super important. Also too, I love seeing groups out there using cat balls, the little light up cat balls. They're ridiculously inexpensive. And, just from using them, if you set one out and you turn it on and you leave a room and there's just nothing there, no vibrations and anything, and it still goes out, and starts trickling. Sometimes, and then you catch other things too. I just wonder, okay, is that, something that is just that really basic little piece of easy technology? And another one too is if we've had them growing up, or if you have children, those little, they come in a clear plastic stand and they have the little metal pegs, and you put your hand in it and it makes the shape of your hand. I love having one of those and lay it out because, you know, you never know, like if there's no one in that room, but you come back and it looks like there's a fingerprint or something in it, it could potentially be something.
And to expand on that, we have just recently started using, you can go out to a party store and buy balloons that light up. And we've just started using those, and we can see from a distance, you know, we set this thing in a cone so that it doesn't move and there's no airflow. We can see from a distance if that balloon is being played with or moved, because it does light up. And the darn thing stays lit up for like days.
Yes. They come in like a pack of 20.
Yeah, so we have plenty.
Can I come in on the cat balls thing?
I'm sorry.
Can I come in on the cat balls thing?
Yeah.
They have been marketed by, a few years ago by Cody Desbian, who appears on Ghost Nation. He's actually going out with Jason Hall's daughter, Satori. They're made of very, very cheap electronics. So colleagues have been testing them, and basically they do go off without any, but it's because of the poor electrics and the cheap made. There's nothing in there that indicates that there's potentially anything paranormal.
I have a few in my house for the cats, and they don't play with them much, but I hit them with my toes a lot. Yeah, they're pretty cheap.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to what are we trying to do? We're trying to gather evidence, and there's subjective evidence and objective evidence. And we're looking at a burden of proof. Are we wanting to prove something on the balance of probability, like you would in a civil case? Or are we trying to prove something that goes beyond all reasonable doubt? And I would strongly argue it's the latter. And if anybody comes up with questions, have we got the answers to back them up? And with a lot of the equipment, we don't.
Okay, so you mentioned flashlights for communication, but being able to see where you're going was your point.
Not for communication.
But we have seen them used for communication. What are some of the reasons this is not always plausible or reliable?
Because, don't get me started, but.
Please get started. We need time wasters.
Let me just give one reason.
We could have done the whole panel about this.
Yes.
Go for it.
I hate it. We do a lot of public, investigations, and we do these for fundraisers for historical properties. So, I mean, there's a lot of lay people that come. There's one particular individual that comes every time, and she will take this, it's like a small, can you think of the name of the?
Mag light.
Mag lights. That's what I was trying to think of earlier, Karen.
It's like the small mag, like the little one, where you can unscrew, the end of it and barely make a connection, okay? So she carries it like this, and she walks around with it. So therefore, just her movement, yes, I know, just her movement is jiggling the thing around, and she'll say, is there anyone here, light up my flashlight. The flashlight lights up. She goes, thank you. So all night long you hear, thank you. And I'm just like, oh my God, here she comes again with that damn flashlight. So, yes, not a fan, because you automatically set up the experiment to fail. You've tweaked a piece of equipment, it's not totally connected. So therefore you've set it up to fail. That's not how it's intended to be used. So you've tweaked it, with a huge margin of error right there that you created yourself. To carry it around is one thing. Again, if you lay it down, and there's any wind or walking around, there's going to be vibration. It's going to do that. And if you're standing right there in front of it, moving back and forth, talking to it, well, then you're making movement, and you're going to cause the reaction, that you're saying. But to expand upon this story, I have to say, I know you're not a fan of ghost boxes, but we were doing the Estes method, double blind. We had a investigator sitting over in a dark corner. He was not even seen by anybody else. We were asking questions out there, and I remember asking a question, something to the effect of, introduce myself or whatever. And this lady with the flashlight was saying, well, I just want to say, I want to thank whoever, tweaked my light. And our investigator over in the corner wearing the noise canceling headphones, blindfolded in the dark, all of a sudden just pops off with, "You did." And I thought I was going to lose it because the ghosts are actually calling her out. That they didn't do this, she did. So I'll never forget that.
Yeah, the mag light theory, as it's become known, is a popular one for ghost hunters to use. And I've seen a number of them in the UK actually using mag lights now with different colour filters. So they'll have one with the white, blue, red, green, yellow, and they'll have more lined up on a table in front. And of course, it's just simple physics. That's how it's working. It's just the coils heating up, expanding, contracting, and then it goes on and off. But they'll try it with each one. Oh, can you light up the yellow one? And eventually, of course, the yellow one will come on. And the green one, oh, can we have the red one next? The blue one will come on. Oh, thank you for that, but we want the red one. So what you tend to find is they work the conversation around whatever's actually happening. But it's just simple physics.
Yeah, there's
Yep, go ahead.
Say something?
No.
I do have a question. My husband and I we were touring a military museum in the town that we live in. And he was taking pictures. We walked downstairs and I got really dizzy on the stairs. And then as we get into the bottom and start going into the rooms, it happened but much stronger. What kind of physical aspects have you guys experienced? And could that have been? Is there any kind of science or anything behind a physical reaction like that? Because it's not likely to be, that wasn't some kind of early experience.
Can I come in on this one? It could possibly be something called infrasound. My colleague Steve Parsons wrote this book. He's doing his PhD in infrasound in haunted locations. So infrasound, for those who don't know, it's below our range of hearing. It can occur naturally or man-made. So for those of us who will ever know, we've been driving along in the car and somebody on the other side or behind has opened up a window and you get that, and it's like, oh, gee, put the window up. That is infrasound. Okay, but obviously the car moving along, airflow has caused it. It can be made by fans. It can be made by the wind. So the wind whistling through a location will cause those kinds of feelings. Now, Steve has been doing the research at Mary King's Close in Edinburgh, which is a very reputedly haunted location. What he found was that when the medium went around and was standing in certain areas within the property, they would come in and go, oh, I don't like it here. I'm getting a very negative feeling. I sense a feeling of dread, a negative spirit, perhaps. Those were the areas where there was naturally occurring infrasound. Now, certain people are more susceptible to it. Females are more susceptible than males. So that could well be a possible explanation for what you experienced, but without being there.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why are females more susceptible than males?
Ask Steve.
What time is it in London?
5 hours ahead of here.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's obviously he's towards completing the PhD research on that. But yeah, just females tend to be more statistically susceptible to the feelings of infrasound, although that does not discount that men are as well.
Probably a baby thing. Our ears are more sensitive to certain
I figured it was something physiological.
so that we can hear babies.
Yeah.
It's just a genetic.
Have you guys ever experienced anything physical while you're around?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, but mine's been like being grabbed and scratched, you know.
I have been grabbed, although I will briefly tell, we were at Mary's Heights in Fredericksburg, and some friends of ours were in period costume for the Civil War era, and some bud had brought Civil War music on a tape recorder, and I'm running our digital camera, and we're walking down the sidewalk, and I hit a spot, and all of a sudden, I feel this tremendous sad just wash over me. I'm like crying. I'm like, oh my God, it's so sad, and I am not that kind of female, really, and it was just out of nowhere, and 2 steps down the path, it was gone. And I don't know what the hell that was, but it's on the videotape because I was running the tape and I said that. And it was like, I don't know what the hell that was. Did somebody die here? Did something touch me? I don't know. But that was one of the most profound personal paranormal experiences I've ever had. I've never had another one like that.
Yeah. Last 2 summers ago, I was up in Catawba at Bunker Hill Bridge. So it's one, I think, 2 of the only covered bridges that still remain in the state of North Carolina. And I go a lot because it's only about 30 minutes from my house. And this one time that I went, you kind of park in a parking lot and then you know, walk up to it. It's very accessible. And at the time, my daughter was about 2.5 years old. And there's this beautiful, I don't know much about plants, flowering plant that stands by a plaque that tells you a little bit of information before you walk over. So I was a little bit ahead of her, right at the end of where the bridge started. And I just got the most feeling, I was so nauseated. I mean, it just like that came over me. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, you know, where's my kid? And I really didn't think much of it in that moment because I was like, well, maybe I didn't eat, maybe my blood sugar, you know, dropped or something. But when I turned around to see where she was, she had stuck her hand in that plant. So I went over there and there was bees in there. And then my immediate thought was someone trying to get my attention to warn me that my kid could be in danger? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as she got her hand out of there and we kept walking, that feeling immediately went away. But I didn't see it and then had that feeling. Because that feeling came, I didn't even know it was going on. Turn around, she was maybe from here to Jason. We weren't far apart. But that was kind of my thought process of like, I wouldn't have turned around unless I felt that way.
So the last question that I have, we've kind of already touched on because y'all are fabulous and know what's going on. But we talked about the spirit boxes and the portals. How do I say this now? Because we've talked about how much we hate them. So, what are there any pros to this equipment at all? Is it possible that anything could be coming through it, or is it figments of our imagination? Is it what pareidoia that you said?
I mean, I've gotten some EVPs. I have a couple. I don't have it with me. They're my greatest hits. I have one where we were in a historic place and I bumped into a table and said something stupid like Al the Printer attacked me. And then there's a whispered, sorry, in a male voice. And I spent 3 days after that trying to replicate how that possibly could have happened. Like there were other people would be like, what did someone else say in here? And then I have a drum roll from Gettysburg from around the Spangler Spring area where we had been doing some EVP. And then there's just this drum roll out of nowhere, like a snare drum. I was going somewhere with that. But yeah, I think the digital recorders are definitely a pro. You just really have to be careful to listen to it critically and then go through and try to figure out whatever it might have been. Like I was thinking about, was it the car pinging? No, the car makes a different noise. We were like 100 feet from the road. It wasn't road noise. I think more of a pro is just evaluate your evidence. Whatever you're using, know how it works, and take the time to critically evaluate everything you get. Learn about photography, learn about recording, learn about video, talk to other people, get some critical opinions. Don't be afraid to show people something and have them say, well, I think that could be a reflection off a window. I see so many things that people show me. They want it to be a ghost so bad. And when you tell them, well, no, I think it's just a reflection of that tree that's like right outside the window. It's in the other picture, but you can't see it in this one. Oh, no, it must be a ghost.
Mm-hmm. And they get quite defensive and almost
they
angry
they
that
do,
you're
and
debunking
like
them.
90% of my evidence is reflections off windows and somebody's stomach growling on the tape and weird reflections off chrome popcorn machines in a room. It's like, you have to critically evaluate whatever you're doing. So I'm not going to say don't use some of this stuff. Some of it's better than other stuff, I think. But even those ghost boxes, just like be very critical about what you're listening for and evaluate the shit out of it and get respected opinions from other people. Cultivate friendship with people who are experts in this field. We're in fandom. You know somebody that does video work. You know somebody that does special effects. And just get down into it and be your own worst critic with what you're looking at, and then share the stuff around that you think, I don't know what it is, but I can't explain it.
I think picking up on exactly those points, what I've been noticing over the last couple of years of observing the ghost hunting groups that I've been with is that they don't read. They generally don't read books to find out what the research has been done in the past, what the conclusions were. Part of that is academia's fault because they don't make it accessible. And that's in terms of access or in terms of being able to understand what they've bloody well written. I picked up a number of papers and thought, what is this person talking about? I don't understand it. It's because it's not written in an easily accessible way. But it's not just the reading. Ghost hunters generally don't record their findings. They don't put their philosophy down on paper. Look, what do I believe? I have to put down what my biases are because I have them. We all have them. I can't stand Zach Bagans, but I have to watch what he's doing as a way of understanding what he's actually what his approach is. Writing down what the methodology is. We're going to use this bit of equipment. Recording what equipment is being used, why you've chosen that bit of equipment, knowing what the limitations are, and then writing up a good report afterwards. And then critically, like I said, evaluating what you've got. Be your own critic, give it to other people. But unless you've written it all down, if the next team comes along 6 months or 6 years later, how are they going to know what you've done? How can they possibly pick up where you left off if there's no record of what's happened? A YouTube video simply isn't good enough. But that's what most ghost hunting groups want to do, is YouTube or make a video of what they've done, their so-called investigation. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, that's why you should go to places more than once.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people just go to one place and they think they've got all this evidence, and like you said, they put it on YouTube and they do whatever. One of the things that, like, we just go back to places over and over again because you're still trying to prove that documentation or whatever you got on that very first visit, you're still trying to really disprove that. Like, how did this happen? And then stuff continues to build on that. And you're constantly trying to either debunk or prove it. So
one of my other greatest hits for investigating and evaluating evidence is do a walkthrough in the daylight, or at least with the lights on. Get an idea of where stuff is and how stuff's set up, because you'll get weird shit in your pictures at night, and then you'll go back and go, oh, there really was a stop sign way over there, and that's what's reflecting in my picture. You really have to know the lay of the land, and going places frequently is a good way. Like, we've been to Gettysburg and investigated like dozens of times. The one historic property that I had the printer thing, we've been there a few times. We've been to the Dr. Mudd House in Southern Maryland with several different groups many times. It is crazy haunted. It's a fun place to go. The kids are really nice to you, the spirit kids. Like, yeah, you get this body of evidence of like, well, clearly it's haunted. I've been there 6 times and something has happened every time.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Admiral approach, which Jason and you've taken, I think, at Rosedale, is keep going back to that location. You'll notice that ghost hunters, it's almost a badge of honor. It's like Facebook friends. The more places they've been, the better an investigator they claim to be. But isn't it better to do one place superbly than 300 places terribly?
Yes. Yes.
So it's quality, not quantity.
And I would also expand on what Dylan said about, the documentation not being there. Like when we do, and even at Rosedale, when we do investigations, we do the written reports. And those written reports are given to the client. So at that point, we maintain a strict confidentiality, method. And unless that client wants that information out to the next team or publicly or YouTube or whatever, it's not going out there. So, and like Dylan says, there's not access to that unless the client pulls in another team years later and that report is provided to them. That's the only way that someone else coming in after would know. In the case of Rosedale, we've gone about at over 10 years now, and we keep trying different things with different combinations of people. Yes, ma'am.
Let's say, you had mentioned offhand after the first question, comment about, of course, they're going to be going through the location at night, so up all night. You mentioned you're walking through a location during the day at least once. Situation. Are there certain paranormal investigation equipment, pieces, or techniques that you think would work better in a daylight investigation than they would during a nighttime investigation?
I mean, cameras always work better with more light that you've got.
Anything but night shot infrared will work during the day, even FLIRs. You just have to be careful about, again, know what your ambient temperatures are, know what, like, things are quieter at night. Like, I've had experiences during the day for sure, but things tend to be quieter at night, and especially if you're in like a public building, like a hotel,
Traffic area.
You want it to be quieter and coming in on power so you don't have all the outside noise. Like, if you were here at the last panel, there was, I don't know what the hell was murder in there or something, there was like 3 loud bangs, but if you hear that in the middle of the night, you're gonna think it's a ghost, and it might just be the workers. But yeah, it's quieter at night for sure. Although the Gettysburg, you can't really be out there at night anymore. They're sunrise to sunset now because idiots ruin it for everybody. But when it first started, you could be out there till like 10
A lot of
p.m.
graveyards are like that too.
Yeah.
Sunset, you gotta get out.
I think it comes back to when did the witness have their experience?
That too.
Yeah.
If the witness experience was 3:30 in the afternoon and the
That's
lobby
when you
was
wanna be
full,
there, yeah.
that's when you need to be there. What was going on at that time? It's just a TV thing that Victorians obviously used to seances and the near darkness and that kind of thing. But the TV has really just pushed this thing out there that ghost investigation has to be at night. It doesn't.
And not to mention too, like our K2s that we, hate, they got lights on them. So you can see those lights at night, so.
All right, good. Anyone else have any more questions? We have just a couple more minutes before we, go ahead.
What's the best way to go in? What steps do you do to prepare to go into a place like this? Where you want to do your own investigation? What are some basics that you do to get ready to go to kind of clear your mind of any kind of preconceived notions or anything?
I kind of use a meditation. I will meditate and ground myself before I go somewhere. And, and I always have permission to be there and, never go alone. The constant, always use the buddy system kind of thing. And even if like say you and another person are going somewhere on your own, even let a third party know where you're going and how long you expect to be there and come back, just for safety. And if you've gotten your permission to be there, then you don't have to worry about, I'm sneaking around and I'm gonna get caught or whatever.
Don't do that.
That's not a good thing. Don't do that. But I ground and try to clear my mind and then go in with a clean slate, so to speak.
Tina mentioned, use the buddy system, always keep someone with you. That's not only for safety reasons, that's for validation reasons as well. Because, Tina and I might separate and go in different directions and I come back and have all these experiences and she didn't have nothing. There's no one to validate anything that I'm saying. So, I'll always keep someone with you for safety reasons and for validation reasons.
And I think if you're gonna go into it scared, we all do some things sometimes for the shock value of, I'm gonna sneak into the cemetery to be fun. I think if you already go into it scared, or you already go into it like, oh, this place is crazy haunted, I'm gonna see a ghost, you can bias yourself. I'm already scared, so every noise is good to jump at. You're out, we do battlefields, you're outside, of course there's noises in the woods, there's raccoons and possums and owls. Every noise is not something coming to eat you. I think, do your research. We had a research panel the other night. Definitely, unless you're working with someone who's gonna be spirit communicating, then you don't want to give them too much research. Do your research. Know the history of the place. Know the lay of the land. Know what the operating hours are. Get to know some of the people that work there. Or if you're working with going into somebody's house, what have they seen? Get the background information. Interview them. Find out what you're looking for. So you kind of already have an idea of what might be there and what the experiences are. I see a lot of people that, I think my house is haunted. Well, what has happened to make you think that? Well, the picture, one of my friends that are a coworker has a pic of their Ring camera, so where the picture fell off the wall. My first question was, well, it fell this way and swung on a nail and fell off. Did the nail just come out of the wall? Has anything else ever happened in the home to make them think it was haunted? Do you hear things, smell things, see things? What other weird shit's been going on? And I think she took that back to her coworker, and I never heard anything back because I'm sure it was just the nail fell out of the wall and they were crazy embarrassed. Do your research, take your time, get to know where you're going. Don't just go in there blind. I don't like to go anywhere blind. I don't always give my husband information because he's kind of insensitive, but I don't like to go anywhere blind. I like to at least know, why am I going here? Dr. Mudhouse, a lot of the spirits there are children, either family children. Other people have done that research. I can pretty much state you for a fact that John Wilkes Booth is not haunting that house. He was there for 6 hours on the worst night of his life in great pain. He's not haunting that house. But I know people who will firmly haunt. No, I don't think so. But he was there. So do your research. Or read.
Okay, so in this last little bit, I know we're on the last day of con. It's been a great con. Hope you all have had a great time. Do you guys have any other panels? Anything else? Where can they find you for the last 4 hours we have left, I think.
No, this is my last panel for this year. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here once again. We're going to be heading back to Savannah in about half an hour's time, but when we go back round to the table, I do have some copies available of Ghostology by my colleague Steve Parsons. So it's a great book that tells you about the history of ghost hunting, what people have done before, but also he works through all the different equipment, electromagnetic fields, radiation, infrasound, temperature. Temperature is the key. Keep looking at temperature. That's what his advice is. Keep looking at temperature. 38% of cases, temperature drops are reported. So keep looking at it. And we have copies of this book available.
So this is my last panel I'm sitting on, although I'll be here all day today and leaving tomorrow morning. I am between paranormal groups. I have a pagan blog. It's not ready for public consumption, but I am repping a new con in the Williamsburg, Virginia area called Con Video. We have a very experienced con staff, so don't be put off by the whole new thing. We have a Kickstarter coming up in a few more weeks to get, I think, seed money so we can actually put the con on. We have a guest of honor, which is science fiction and media tie-in author Keith DeCandida, who is delightful if you've never met him. We're good friends. And if you're interested and Williamsburg is a good hike for you, please come up and take a flyer. We got the QR code on there so you can get to the website, which is already available, and see what we have going on. That'll be in January 2024.
And I have another panel in here. Death is the punchline. When does paranormal and true crime go too far?
I'm looking forward to that. I love true crime. I watch Frozen Files all weekend in my room.
And we will be here most of the day. We still are have our CAPS table up and running in the hallway. So if you have a ghost story to tell us or want more information, you can come by and see us. And if you do want to go to Historic Rosedale, we are hosting a public hunt next weekend as a fundraiser for their restoration efforts.
So this is also my last panel for the weekend. I'll be joining some other ones as a listener. I will be down at the CAPS table as well. And just to elevate the Historic Rosedale investigation that we're doing next week, it's 2 segments. So you can sign up for the paranormal grounds investigation, which has 4 sections that we'll go out and do. But then after that at 10:30, we only do it 3 times a year. We call it the stroke of midnight. We actually go into all 3 levels of the house and we stay in there for a few hours and investigate together.
And this is my last panel, and I am going to be heading out here in the next 30-45 minutes back to Winston. You guys can find me on Facebook, Jason Roach. And if you're interested in copies of my book, I have them here with me. And that's pretty much it. You guys have a great rest of con and be safe going home.
I think it's
Haunted Williamsburg. There's a couple of books that you've written.
Oh, I sent that to you instead of Alex. Whoops, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely be looking for vendors.
Yeah,
we shall see.
We'll see. At least it's
We
you
summer
know,
everything.
exactly. And you might hate it, but at least it
And if I hate it, I just
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
too much.
Really enjoyed it.
Oh, look, I have been to that particular
I'm gonna leave this out because
So Randolph House in Williamsburg is like off of your.
How far is it from here?
Yeah, the more you question.
That's
Yeah.
Like, some really random shit there.
The good thing that they have is that they
And
try
the
to
phone was
get
new,
right
but
there
it
and
kept
then.
going
and
in
they
and
don't
out.
get
So they
it.
can't figure out why the hell that happened, because I know
It's not like
they
ever
were
so
doing
Yeah.
that they don't
But
try
the weirdest thing we have happened in Williamsburg.
Try to see the budget.
Exactly. In
But I
Hampton,
think
Virginia,
that
there's maritime, maybe they have all these,
Oh,
the managers.
back
The actual
that
police that are
is
on that
actually investigating and
Yeah, there's a special up here that's always scared.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I hate to
Yeah.
scared.
I'm just gonna look up.
If you go scared, you're gonna set yourself up automatically.
Already got my little name done.
Oh, you're welcome. Do you like to read?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's fiction, but it's inspired by personal paranormal experiences I've had in my life. So it's a team of investigators investigating a haunted Airbnb in Statesville, North Carolina.
This is lit.
And
But I took this video and I'm
it's
looking through
kind
the
of like
camera at it,
Ghost
and
Hunters
it's flickering.
meets Da
Keep
Vinci
flickering.
Code with a psycho
If I do
twist.
it hard and-
I'm gonna look you up on Facebook so then I can get a copy of it.
I have them here if you would like to get one here. Hardcovers are $25 and paperbacks are $15.99.
But even watching when I was
Yes.
taking the video with the camera, like I got up to take a picture and I see it flickering. I'm like, is that the light on the camera? Like, what? This is the actual, like, the light from the monitor. This was the last thing they saw when it was sinking. I'm like, I don't know why it's doing that. I have no idea. I asked a couple of my friends that I don't know if you have a video analysis.
I definitely
it
will.
might be.
Which one do you want?
Because it's
Hardback or
really dark room.
hardbacks are nice?
It really wasn't.
They're
It wasn't
pretty.
flickering. It might have been lit, but it was not flickering.
It's like me,
the
a
camera's
chemist.
like.
I like extra copy, I mean, extra
I don't know.
options. So I'm probably not
I'm pretty sure there's some kind of reason.
I'll go with hardcover.
Okay.
At the Randolph House, the camera just keep going in and out of photos. And there's some documented stories they'll tell you about, things in this one staircase. And,
Yeah.
I have a couple of my friends who says, my husband's a sensitive, our friend that went in, they're like, yeah, that house is like not happy, but I couldn't get in. They weren't opening that window tours that particular day. I haven't been there yet. Yeah, I haven't figured that one out.
Okay, so our total came to $16.75 with tax.
It's one of those things that you just have to take, but you're not still an album spot.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get back down there
They
at
have
some point,
centers
because we
and-
didn't see the whole after the exam. It's caught up with monitors. I go back into that room either with this phone or different phones.
Come on.
It doesn't say me on.
So when is your
Never get this thing to work.
Convivial is in January. It's Martin Luther King weekend. So it's definitely, so it's third weekend of January. For the non-Americans, third weekend of January.
Is that
So,
paranormal part of it?
This is Square.
we haven't really tagged out a lot of the programming yet. We're still getting the finances up and running. I don't know that it is proposed to paranormal track, but I think I might get into my
Actual
program.
pen instead of this marker.
It's a very small belt.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what their thoughts were. A lot of people, we have a Facebook group too. I think it's linked off the website. If you wanted to come into the Facebook group and talk about it. If you wanted to come and present paranormal stuff, like I think if there's enough interest.
Yeah.
We could look into maybe having game panels, probably not a whole track because it's a very small belt.
These paranormal parts, all they're interested in people to be on TV.
Yeah, I never go because it's always like, oh, it's TV shows I don't watch. We're not
There you
talking,
go.
we're not
Thank
talking
you.
about this stuff. Like, I want to talk
Nice
about
meeting
this
you.
stuff.
I've also found that we suggest that the ones that
Okay,
actually
cool.
work, we said,
Awesome.
Yeah, Danielle bought
academics
me,
do it. We generally have an interest,
Danielle
Well,
bought
they
me
invited
this
us.
book.
And they went, that's a very good idea, so they invited me.
And then-
Got to present it.
And like no clue that we knew each other from last year.
Yeah, and then I was like, yeah,
You just see
Danielle
them as
just
being
bought me
stupid.
this
You
thing, and
genuinely
she
think
bought
if you're
your
gonna do
book
it.
at that conference and mailed it to me. Hi.
Yeah.
Documenting things. which are-
But the people that come to those cons, they don't want to talk. Like I swear to God, we were in
Nice meeting you,
Gettysburg
too.
T-shirt stores.
Hey, I'm glad you all had a great time. I hope so, too.
The guy that works there, we talk about what we're doing.
Y'all be
Like,
careful
American
going home.
Battlefield Ghost T-shirts. Thank you. And so just some guy side was like, oh, I have these pictures, and my husband looks at him. He's like, well, this could be this and that could be that. They pretty much all had a Monday sort of thing. Like, and we gave him a card that we never heard back. I got bitched out on a message board one day for it was like a whole situation of like photos
Yeah.
in this abandoned property and like blah blah blah. Oh, there's a ghost next to the store. Like 3 pictures back. Now, yes, it did look like somebody in like a cowboy hat leaning against her. 3 pictures back from across the field, you can see the paint is peeling next to the door. And I'm like, you don't think that might be the paint peeling? Like if you look back at photo 3, I can see where there's paint peeling next to the door. He bitched me out. He bitched me out like profanity, like F-bombs. I'm like, dude, you put your stuff out for evaluation. I'm just telling you what I think. I'm not. No, don't do that.
Well, everybody flew the coop, but thank you guys for all your feedback and an awesome panel.
I'm always happy to be on a panel with people that have their heads screwed on straight about the tech because I have legit left groups that were enamored with the screaming at flashlights for 6 hours or K2 meters, doing this into the K2 meter. I'm like, If they're really going to turn it on, it will happen. Turn
Right.
it on. Turn it off.
There's a book called Ghosted, which came out at the end of last year, written by 5 parapsychologists between the UK and the US. And they've stated that there has been some examples where they've used electromagnetic field tech, but obviously higher end, and there is something happening, but they just don't know what.
I do believe it. I do believe that there's things like with that thing with the natural tribe. I mean, like he'd never seen it act that way, and the fact that it's happening at the same time that the medium's talking to, like, it was like, oh my lord. That same group, we used that at the Dr. Mudhouse once, and there was like, it was going off because something was in the stairwell. We're all in the attic and something's in the stair. He's gotten full body apparitions through second floor windows. And Civil War antebellum gowns, like, I don't know, like, he's like the ghost whisperer. I don't know.
I mean, so the thing is with that particular, he's a medium, a psychic. He could, I mean, is it the fact that, is it like the one in Mary King's Close where the medium is actually picking up infrasound, perceiving it as paranormal? Could that be the same, that some geomagnetic thing which is perceiving as paranormal?
It's fascinating. To me, it's fascinating. I want to answer these questions. Like the thing with the double blind with the ghost box, and I've actually participated in one of those. Like, but I don't know that it's still not some kind of psychic interaction between you asking questions over here and me, even with my headphones on over there. Like, but I don't know. I can't.
Is the Estes method just a version of the Gans files?
Yeah, like I can't separate that because I've played it remote viewing a few times, like with my husband, and. Okay, we're married and all, but I'm in here thinking purple kumquats. It's typically my, like, I'll think of something bizarre, and he'll come back in and it's like, purple kumquats? I'm like, yeah.
I think couples develop a link, don't
So,
they?
yeah, it's kind of weird. Or, like, you know, he'll be having a bad day, his mother will call him. It runs on his family. It runs in mine, too, on my mother's side. Like, there's a little psychic weirdness. My Irish great-granddad was born with the caul on his face. He had the sight. I never met him. He died when I was 1. I have a picture, but he could like pick up a box and be like, "Oh, this Christmas present is a tie," and like 3 days later, it's a tie. That's the family story.
Because Bridget, my partner, mother's from Limerick, and that's on the family. That's where they're all from. And her grandmother used to do the tea leaves in Ireland and stuff like that. And there seems to be a sort of a family thing.
There's definitely something that runs in families. I don't know who else in my family might have gotten it, but I'm not that sensitive. I'm a very good bullshit detector on people and a very developed gut feeling. If I tell you something like I don't like him, something's wrong with him, it's always true. It's always true.
Psychic is a table,
so yeah.
Maybe that's it. Right, let's get back to the table.
And I really wish America had more robust parapsychology programs. I was never more disappointed in the day of my undergrad life when I had to take like two other like sciences for my engineering degree, and I was like, I want to take a parapsychology class, and Maryland didn't really have one. I'm like, are you shitting me? So I took Psych 101 and ghosted through it because I didn't really want to be there. And like, why?
Yeah, it's a shame. I think the Parapsychological Association is based over here, and they do a lot of weekly meetings.
Like you're right at Duke, and I think there's maybe one other place that's actually like doing like robust stuff, and most other colleges won't touch it. Yeah. And that's a shame.
There's a couple of sociology departments that are interested. Have you read Paranormal America?
No.
3 sociologists from California, really good book. They spend a lot of time with the ghost hunters, the UFO hunters, the Bigfoot hunters, comparing.
The UFO hunters, man, like I'm slightly interested in UFOs, especially from like my professional perspective of being an aerospace professional. Like, and I find it really hard, like even with my weird ass theories about alien abductions really being fairy abduction, it tracks very well. The people are just so fucking Looney Tunes. I really want to get into there and start investigating, and I can't because like, oh my god, you're crazy.
What they found was that the UFO hunters think the ghost hunters and Bigfoot hunters are completely human too. The Bigfoot hunters think the ghost hunters are
we all do. I got a friend up in Maryland that hunts Sasquatches, and I'm like, dude, you're finding bears. You're in Western Maryland, and fucking, they're bears, dude. They're bears. But then again, I also go out and like yell at recorders in my spare time and do this kind of weird shit. What's that? You know, I don't talk that much about my weird stuff. The most I have talked about at work is that I really think Roswell was a failed satellite launch. Because they talk about metal that you can crumple up in your hand and then it goes right back. It's like, well, that sounds like space blanket to me. It's, multi-layer insulation has different layers of metal and fabric, and when you crunch it up, and we're talking about the 40s when the rocketry programs are just getting started. And they were doing sounding rockets and launches out of White Sands And Roswell's not far from White Sands, so I think it was a failed rocket launch or a failed satellite launch or something. All this debris comes down. These people don't know what the hell it is. I don't think it was a balloon. I think it was some kind of a rocket or a satellite launch. And my coworker's sort of like, So moving on to this training course, I'm the weird one in my office. It's very strange being like a pagan rocket scientist. Like whatever group I'm in, I'm always the strangest person because I don't have my brains falling out like in the metaphysical community, and then at work I'm like, yes, fairies are real, guys, and they're like, what's wrong with you? Whatever.
Stay in touch.
Yes, we will. Do you have a card or something? I can give you my email address somewhere. Or actually, you can write back on one of the couple pocket of it. Okay. I will email you. Do you have an email address? Yes, I will keep in touch. Plus, we are hopefully going to Scotland next year. If I can get everybody healthy. My mother-in-law just had a stroke and broke her arm, but she's healing. My husband is going through cancer treatments. So if we can finally get everybody healthy in the spring, we really want to go over to Scotland and go do that because he's Scottish by Carruthers. My mother-in-law's got the Carruthers back to the William Wallace times. So yeah. We're gonna do all the things. We're gonna do all the touristy things, probably all the random ghost stories that are not very good. But I like that. I love that. We went to New Orleans. I think took every ghost tour in New Orleans, and some of them were really not so great. But if the storytelling is good, I'll roll with you.
Yeah.
But some of those stories are real. Savannah's on my list of places to go. Charleston's on my list of places to go that we haven't been. I want to go back to New Orleans, see if the Delory house is still as creepy as it's ever been. Oh my God, that's a real life story that's creepy as shit. You can't make that shit up. It was good to meet you. I will definitely stay in touch. If I can get myself away from the table, and then I think I might need to go to the restroom myself. Let's set this over here. It's trash. I was in here all day yesterday. I'm not just a presenter, I'm really into this shit. I'm into this shit my whole life. If I can't get to the ladies' room and get back.
I was working our store's convention table yesterday. And today I was like, hey, y'all need me? They're like, no, like if you want to come back anyway, like, explain all day the same thing.
I think this has been a really good, for me, I fucking feel about a lot of the paranormal conferences that you can find, not all of them, but a lot of them just want to be like, hey, as seen on TV, doing awesome cons and like paranormal. I don't really care much about paranormal celebrities or people who've been on TV or a lot of the YouTube people because they're not my kind of people.
It's particularly interesting for me.
This is like a technical conference. This is lovely. I've heard more about this shit this weekend than I heard.
I see, like, I love hearing about it from like professional things. Most of what I get to see is the pagan community. It's a very.
Were you in the pagan paranormal thing yesterday? Yeah. Ask 5 pagans. I'll be right back. We'll talk to you more about it.
Run out of here like. Find somebody to talk to. Actually is. I'll be like, I'll have a chain and I have the kind of or this. This is actually a balance.
Yeah, it is actually a pendulum. It's just on an necklace, so it's not wear it, so it's handy all the time. And it's amethyst, so it just looks like a necklace and it'll be things on weirdo. Alright,
I cannot
nobody picks up on the weirdo.
I cannot hide that I'm not part of it.
I am usually very upfront about it. Weirdo, you're sure. Yeah.
How far out are you from? Are you like locally or is travel?
No, I'm from Savannah. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. My husband used to live up in Statesville, so.
Are y'all trying to get back home today or are you gonna stay tomorrow?
Yeah, I have to go.
I have a lucky luck, I'm just down in Rockville. Like 30-ish minutes into traffic.
In traffic, that's the important part.
These dogs are
Better now. 2 ounces of coffee and a whole bottle of water, like, hey. What were we talking about? I have to move my shit out of the corner.
I mean, the last topic we stumbled into was
Paganism?
paganism and the paranormal overlap.
Yeah, they do quite a lot, and not always.
And it's a very weird situation that's most of where you like get to see the paranormal side of things, and then getting into it more like, okay, this is how we tested, documented.
Yeah, I've had experiences, and I've been a witch for almost 30 years, so officially a witch, probably,
It's like claiming the name for that long.
I was called a villain, I'm always open to, but, I was a critical person, and I'm in pagan circles, I'm too scientific, if I'm in scientific things, it can just, call it made, like, she's convinced she's a medium, and I think she's got some talent, I think she's got some talent. But she's gone off the deep end, like she's like the paranormal thing, maybe paranormal special. Oh, I talked to ghosts, I didn't come that great. She's really weird. I talked to all these guys, and we're best friends. Where are my friends?
You're just over here like unverified first osmosis.
Yeah, it's like, not everything is a sign. Sometimes that crows are just talking about crow shit and they just interact with life. Sometimes, sometimes it's a ghost.
Because I can feel that sometimes an owl on our property just means that we've got a pretty good rabbit population there, and it's hungry.
I'm very just actually. I've had my mom through disease since 2008. I've had her show up in dreams, where I've been fully convinced that we're having an actual conversation, and other times where she's just been like involved in
Just like a character in the story.
Yeah, I don't think that every dream I've ever had about my mother since she passed the communication with her. This is fun. It's my first ConCarolinas and my first time presenting here, but I really enjoyed this. It's Miss Top Shop.
It's my second year coming to ConCarolinas, but my first year getting to like actually function. Last year I had more poison, so I was very weird.